Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the show. My name is Evan Mead.
I'm Lyle Groniger.
And with some delicious popcorn, it is me, Josh Weinberg.
Oh,
Hey.
popcorn. And welcome to Soda Speak. Hey, Josh, you want some soda to wash that popcorn down?
I've got my trusty bottle of water right here. I'm all set, thanks.
You don't want pop with your popcorn? Ugh, sticky.
Call it popcorn for a reason, yo.
Well,
Yeah,
I figure,
so-
might as well get some popcorn because I'm on a movie episode again.
Welcome. It's not too often we get you on movie episodes, so welcome. No, this will be fun.
Thank you.
Now,
I mean, you and Lyle and Cody are more the film aficionados on this particular podcast, but every once in a while I like to spread my metaphorical wings, if you will.
no,
Oh,
this will
for sure.
be good. It'll be good practice for everyone.
This
And,
is the 94th episode. Are we gonna
yes,
talk
we're getting
about? Are we gonna talk about movies from 1994? Oh wait,
Okay, so
you say
none
that,
of my-
but you all will see soon.
now
we jumped the gun on that one. Oh well.
no worries. I mean, Pop Talk has us covered, man. We don't need to do an episode about 94.
Pop talk.
Very good.
Oh,
year.
rats.
Hey, F for respects.
Yes, sir. Good Godspeed, Cody. Bring it back. Bring it back.
If we get like 1,000 subscribers in the next 2 days, I'm sure he will come back. Like, the flames
Wow.
coming off his feet.
Like,
Have I been
So-
summoned?
now,
I've been summoned.
yes, now, so you're right. This is a movie episode, but so the criteria. Before we get into that, so how about those Oscar noms? As of this recording, the Oscar nominations are out for the 2022 year in film, and the ceremony is the ceremony is scheduled for March 12th.
Yeah, I'm excited actually. There's a few contenders that I'm really hoping win.
Yep. Now,
I don't know if
For-
it sounds-
Now, as in the case of any Oscar nomination run, there are the snubs. And some might call these snubs underrated, which is exactly what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about any
Oh, I
movies
see
from
what you
all.
did there.
We're going to talk about, yeah, I'm working on my good segues, and I think I'm doing a pretty bang up job. So, tonight we're going to be talking about underrated movies. Again, this is our third go. Cody, Lyle, and I did the first two episodes, and we covered some pretty decent hidden gems, if I don't say so myself. But Josh
Yeah.
is going to tonight. Josh is going to join the conversation to figure out like what movies he considers to be underrated, and I'm looking forward to hearing what he says.
Yeah,
So,
I enjoy these episodes quite a lot. Like this and albums, these are ones I look forward to the most.
yes.
Hopefully this one won't take ages to finish.
Oh, we'll
Whoops.
see. We'll see. Okay, so to kick us off, I'm taking us back to 2010. 13
wow.
years ago. Holy shit.
13 years.
Well,
So-
you say that's long.
Okay, so the movie I want to kick us off with is actually the final movie ever made by one of my favorite directors. So, we all know Tony Scott, right?
Yes.
Okay, he has been known. Top Gun is probably my personal favorite film that he's done.
If you've been
Although-
following this guy for the last year, you know how much he loves this particular franchise
Yes.
and its
Yeah.
sequel.
But
I'm more of a true romance guy myself. But,
fair enough. Like, I'm actually willing to admit Top Gun may be my favorite Tony Scott film, but I don't know if it's his best because he's done True Romance, Crimson Tide, Days of Thunder,
Don't
and
He's an
Uh,
Alabama college sports fan?
Spy Game, and all kinds of good stuff. The last movie he did was not about planes or automobiles. It was about trains.
I'm going to make
So-
a terrible joke and we'll move on.
Okay,
Come
let's-
on, ride the train and ride it before it blows up. Go Denzel.
I don't know.
Oh, you
That
have?
was terrible,
Have
I'm
you
sorry.
seen? Have you seen? Josh, have you seen Unstoppable?
I believe if I haven't seen it, I've heard of it. I remember a lot of advertising for this film around that time, but The premise
Okay.
did kind of intrigue me from what I remember of it. I'm going to say I have seen most of it, though, because I feel like I remember some of it.
Now,
You were telling me about this one quite a lot.
yeah, there is a specific reason. So here's the thing. Unstoppable. The premise is ludicrously simple. It's a day in the life of train operators, conductors, engineers, the works, when a freight train, due to an accident involving human negligence and bad luck, a train,
Perfect combination.
a train basically winds up under power, and the yard worker accidentally forgets to apply the brakes and left the throttle on in full power. So the train, oops is right. So this train is run away.
Damn it, Randy, you had one job. Yes,
Oh,
really.
man.
It's
This is fine.
Yeah, so no, that's kind of like. So by the way, the two chuckle fucks who let this train become a runaway were played by Ethan Suplee and T.J. Miller, respectively.
Oh, not those guys.
Yeah, like so.
Oh, 2010, you rapscallion of a year, you.
Yeah, and this was before Ethan Suplee got like monstrously
This
ripped.
is before he lost his weight and before T.J. Miller lost his mind and his
Yeah.
credibility. But
Yeah.
on.
So anyway, so
I knew one of those things, but not the other.
So so basically,
We
the
did a
the freight
podcast
train, a freight train, becomes a runaway in rural Pennsylvania, and
Oh, not
the-
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Hey, there's some nice landscapes in there.
I agree with you. Josh, you're in the company of two people who have driven the Pennsylvania countryside. It is
Wait.
absolutely gorgeous out there.
I mean, we've driven through Pennsylvania on family vacations. Does that count?
oh,
Wait.
totally, it does.
Pennsylvania railroads? Is this a Monopoly movie we've all been waiting for?
Oh, I wish.
Yeah. So yeah, no. The train. Everything goes wrong when Rosario Dawson tries to buy Pennsylvania Avenue,
Ooh,
Pennsylvania
I'd watch
Railroad.
That. I'd watch that.
But
in a
anyways,
heartbeat.
so speaking of Rosario Dawson,
Yes.
Dawson is in the primary cast as the yard master of the train that becomes a runaway. Her whole shtick, imagine Becky from Clerks 2 chewing out the fuck ups who let a runaway freight train go, and on the phone with corporate for half the movie.
So, Clerks, if it was in a train station. I like that premise.
Kinda. Clerks in a rail yard, yeah.
Conductors.
Exactly. Conductors. Yeah. So basically, this train seemingly cannot be stopped, and what kind of makes this an action thriller is I grew up loving trains. I don't know about either of you, but
I think I remember having some
I
train
like
stuff,
model
I think.
trains. Not
Yeah,
so
no,
Model
much
trains are
cool.
nice to look
Oh
at.
man,
Yeah.
I just know that one meme, there's that
There's a-
song, was it Tomska? I like trains.
I like trains.
I like trains.
Anyways,
Yeah,
So-
yeah. I feel like we're talking
I
about
used to
taking
collect.
the
I
piss
used
out
to
of
collect
this.
model
Anyway,
trains too, but we're not going to talk about that.
So
I know, we're
Denzel
being
Washington.
such jerks. Evan's trying to describe why he loves this so much, and we're just poking fun at it every other
So
minute.
No,
Denzel
this is good.
Washington is in this, huh?
He is, yeah.
Okay.
You
I mean,
sound
he's
got
surprised.
that
Lyle,
stoic
you
million-
sound surprised that Denzel
He's really,
Washington.
he's pretty good in this. I mean, granted, it's not as dramatic as like Training Day or Man on
Lord.
Fire or Inside Man,
Training
but
Day.
yeah, yeah.
Malcolm X, Glory.
Do you know what's hilarious?
What was
John?
it called? Oh yeah, the train that couldn't slow down.
Yo, no, honestly, Training Day. It's called Training. The
He was training
the
to
movie
work on a train.
in this movie Unstoppable, he is training Chris Pine's character, which makes that even more hilarious. So the movie literally could have been called Training Day, and
Training for the train day.
I don't think
Exactly.
it would have won as many Oscars if it was called Training Day, or maybe it would have.
I mean,
Maybe
it could have
that's
been
why it
called
won.
Thomas
Training
the
Day.
Tank Engine ain't got shit on me.
That
All right,
see,
all right, so-
Unstoppable needed that joke. Then it
Yeah,
would have won all the Oscars.
Alright.
Yeah.
So Evan, tell me, why do you find this movie underrated? Because I
Well,
got
I
a
was-
pretty basic idea what it's about.
Okay, so the plot is freight train becomes a runaway. Denzel Washington and Chris Pine.
Optimus.
I almost
Prime.
called him
The
Chris
only Prime I
Pratt. There's
know
too.
is the late
God
John
damn it,
Prine,
Hollywood.
rest in peace.
There's too many Chris's. So anyways,
Christ,
so Denzel Washington and Chris Pine have to stop a runaway freight train with Rosario Dawson on the radio, basically guiding them.
Oh, okay.
And
so she's the lady by the computer helping out. All right.
She's essentially she's the lady by she's the yard master. So
why do you find this? Why do you find Unstoppable underrated?
Because, for one thing, this is the last film Tony Scott ever made, and when people look at repertoires of his work and do retrospectives on it, no one talks about this movie. It honestly, I feel like it just kind of came and went. Like, it cleaned up on opening weekend. I saw it opening weekend with my dad back in the day. It was fun to watch. And I think it's underrated because, like, well, no one talks about it. I don't know if it broke even or bombed, but no one really talks about it. It's the final role of one of the best action directors who ever lived, and no one talks about it. It's kind of I guess it's kind of overshadowed by like something like Top Gun or True Romance or even Crimson Tide. But okay. What makes this movie so effective for me is that I'm so used to seeing trains like just in their element, like in the country. You see them like rolling by. They're nice to watch, but it's like, imagine like you enjoy being around trains, you enjoy riding trains, you enjoy looking at trains, and you enjoy watching them go by. But imagine if like one train was unmanned and couldn't stop, like Josh said, the train that couldn't slow down. Imagine if like this train couldn't stop and a train.
So Snowpiercer.
Yeah, no, it could not
train.
Stop.
Oh, that could have been a worthy candidate for.
Now, if only that final season will actually come out, but that's a story for another day.
But yeah, so this train unmanned is to quote Rosario Dawson's trailer line, we're not just talking about a train, we're talking about a missile the size of the Chrysler Building. Because this
I thought it was a crazy train.
Yeah, no. This beast of a machine is just vaporizing everything in its path. There's a scene where it vaporizes an oncoming boxcar. There's a scene where it actually there's actually a really scary scene where a horse trailer get jackknifes on the track, and the farmers basically are basically getting the horses out of the trailer, and it's shot in such a way.
Oh yeah, because two of the tank cars on the train have thousands of gallons of a seriously toxic material that can be extremely corrosive to the human skin.
That's why
that sounds a little bit more problematic.
Yeah, no, it's not just the fact that this train is on a destructive rampage. It's that this train, if it derails, it could basically contaminate a whole town with with like 6 tanker cars or 4 tanker cars or however many it was, with this toxic chemical. Liquid phenol is what it was called.
I see, okay.
So
I imagine there's a lot of scenes where like the Rosario Dawson has to like alter like certain paths that other trains go on so that they're out of the
you got to clear the path, because they have to figure out a way to derail this with as little damage and casualties as possible. Because I think at a certain point it gets to like they're considering, we'll take whatever limits the damage because we're not expecting this to not have some sort of bad ending.
Yeah.
At some point.
Mitigate a disaster. All right. Well, I mean, it sounds good. It's a pretty like. It's a good elevator pitch kind of premise.
Yeah.
For sure.
What I really like about the way Tony Scott and his team did this is this was actually inspired by a real similar incident from 2001.
Yes.
In Northwest Ohio, where a similar idea. Now, granted, some of it was dramatized for film purposes, but the way that, it captured the tension and the drama of, trying to get that, and the fact that no one was injured from that is amazing in and of itself.
Oh.
The thing is, though, I kind of feel like I liked this premise better when it was called The Taking of Pelham 123.
Which is hilarious because the year before...
Exact same premise. Tony Scott directed Denzel Washington starring a film about a guy trying to stop something bad happening on a train.
Well,
that was a remake too of something from 70-something, 80-something, one of those
70s.
Yeah.
To be fair, the remake of The Taking of Pelham 123 that was more of a hostage situation. This is just a man-made disaster.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're tangentially linked, but I think at the same time, the chemistry between Denzel and Chris is definitely there. And you feel for, Chris's character because, like, he's a new conductor who's really trying to get his life back on track after getting served a restraining order by his wife.
Back on track.
No pun intended.
I walked right into that one.
I was
or should
curious.
I say, road.
It's interesting Josh brought that up. I was curious if this was based on any actual events, but
it is. Yeah,
it is.
Josh is right. It's very much. It's based
inspired
on
by the 2001 CSX 8888.
Interesting. Okay, I'll learn more about this. I kind of want to see this.
Oh,
now.
sorry. I was talking that toxic material thing. I was actually reading. That's what the real real train had that.
Yeah, in real life, the train from Ohio did have 2 tanker cars with that chemical on board, which is why it did cause a scare.
That makes sense because that liquid phenol is a
phenol.
real thing.
Evan was right. In the movie, it's phenol. In
yeah.
The real one was something else.
Yeah, that's a real chemical. I've heard of it.
Yeah, and so by the way, it's because this is based on true events. They're not going for it's not a Titanic. Well, it's a Titanic ending. It's
Titanic's based on a real event, Evan.
It's like if you know how the events this movie is based on ended in real life, then you kind of know what the ending is. But it's fun. It's like a knuckle biting experience because the tension is what makes this movie work. Mm-hmm. And by the way, to close out this little talk about Unstoppable, Lyle, do you know what Rosario Dawson's last line in the movie is?
I don't know, Evan. I have not seen this yet, so please tell me.
Okay. Her last line in the movie is, "So, which one of you guys do I kiss first?"
I thought it was, "Finally, the train stopped a-rolling."
Man.
So, now you really want to watch it now.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, speaking of Rosario Dawson, she was in another movie we talked about in this series. The first one we ever talked about, The Rundown.
Yes.
It was another action movie, a little bit more silly,
and they had to run down a train, of course.
Funny connection. I just thought that was interesting.
Unstoppable, to me, it came and went. It's the final film of Tony Scott, and no one talks about it. Check it out. Tony Scott went out with a bang before he tragically took his own life in 2012.
Rest in peace.
But his film career went out with a bang, and I'm sure he would have been very proud of Top Gun Maverick.
Okay.
Very nice.
A little bit more. My interest has peaked.
Great.
Yeah. So, Josh, what's your next choice?
Well, we gotta lighten it up after that. That was a little too intense.
I agree.
We're gonna have a little bit of an easy breezy, whimsical nostalgia reminiscence. I would say, you guys talk. Yeah, as my voice cracks. If everyone remembers the the female directors episode from a while ago, one of the directors that I believe Lyle talked about was Penelope Spheris, who is, I'd say, one of my favorites as well. And while she's done some work like that Lyle probably mentioned, the Decline of Western Civilization documentaries, Wayne's World, I'd say probably, if not Wayne's World, my favorite work of hers is her adaptation of The Little Rascals.
Nice.
From 1994. Now, granted, it's an adaptation of the Our Gang series by Hal Roach, the short films from as far back as the 20s, but as a few years old kid in the mid-90s, this was a great introduction to a series that I think, while there are parts of it that are very mid-90s, it's a really nice introduction to a franchise that's very wholesome. That opening theme, I mean, even if they hum it out, it's just wholesome and fun, and you're introduced to this, group of boys that they just get together and do shenanigans, Alfalfa is a willing protagonist, but just he's kind of adorable. He means well. He just wants to be a normal kid, and he's in love with this girl Darla, and they're very cute together. They have good chemistry, but of course, being that this is young boys, below the age of, I'm going to say 11 or 12, it's still in the cooties age, and of course, who can forget the classic He-Man Woman Haters Club?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole clubhouse thing, that's a great example of set design where, as a kid, that clubhouse always felt so much larger than life. to me when I was watching it, just because everyone has room and they do all the the meetings and taking minutes, and of course all the different characters in here. You've got Alfalfa, you got Spanky, you got Buckwheat and Porky. Buckwheat and Porky are just awesome. They're like, that's the best friend dynamic everybody wants to have as a kid. And they do the little
I got a dollar.
I got a pickle. Hey.
Pickle. Hey.
Yeah. Just a little like this. I love this. I mean, I would say it's underrated because it was a property that very few kids had heard of at the time it came out. But I think it may have sparked a lot of interest in kids, and even certainly like the parents that were watching getting into the Our Gang series. One of my favorite scenes in particular for the execution is when Buckwheat and Porky get the fishing hooks caught on each other, and as one tries to reel it in, it pulls the other closer to the water until it's a great sort of tug of war dynamic. But of course, you don't have a great kids movie in the 90s without equally great bully characters. And of course, you got Butch and Walm.
I always like
and their comeuppance is delicious.
I always like the part where Alfalfa's just walking after his day, like, oh boy, I had a great Thursday today. And then the bullies come in, hey twerp, when's the last time we kicked your butt? Wednesday. And they chase him off, and they do. And then
the editing really speeds up at that point too, and the music gets something. I almost forgot some of the other characters. You've got, of course, the hilariously voiced Froggy.
I was gonna say,
I
forgot him.
I think as well, especially the dynamics between Alfalfa and Spanky. These are two friends that have been through a lot together, and Spanky begins to realize over the course of the film, like, just because Alfalfa loves a girl, it doesn't mean that he's really changing that much or he's sold out or anything like that. Of course, granted, Alfalfa kind of sort of gets framed for events that happen to the clubhouse later on, but it's a coming of age story, but set in the frame of the two genders really coming together. In that way, it may actually be more progressive than people realize.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Because and can we talk about all the cameos and all
I was waiting for you to mention them. Yeah.
You don't talk about the Little Rascals without talking about not only the cameos from adult celebrities, but all the kid celebrities that were either about to blow up or had blown up a few years before.
Well, thanks for pointing that out, because I find that the adult cameos kind of overshadow the kid cameos.
They kind of do, but you can't underestimate the impact of Raven Simone or the Olsen twins in this. For example, are you sure? But the whole gist of what the boys are working towards is the soapbox derby race, which, hello, Saturdays of Thunder.
yeah.
But that's the big thing, that they're trying to build this race, this cart for to be able to beat the bullies and win the prize and get a trophy from AJ Ferguson, who's the best driver there is.
Yeah.
And and especially just the ways they go about trying to get the money to actually put this cart together. There's wacky sitcom shenanigans. Well, I say sitcom, but it's like wacky movie shenanigans. But it also speaks to how well Spheris' style for things like Wayne's World really works as for an off-the-wall kids movie. And I think that's why, it's one of the better things I've seen. And the fact that, I believe, one of the production companies was Amblin. So in a way, Spielberg was involved in this too.
Makes sense.
Yeah. That's kind of nice. And I was talking about you can't have a good kids movie without good bully characters. You also can't have a good kids movie in the 90s without a good rich villain character.
God damn.
Oh, hey, I found him.
Waldo.
Wait, no, he's not wearing a hat.
Oh.
I mean, is Darla written that great? Probably not, but she's a likable enough character, very bubbly. Oh my god! And I'm not gonna spoil the ballet scenes, but those are where some of the best comedy in the film comes from. This is wonderful to come back to.
Have you seen Baby Driver yet, Josh?
Yes, I have.
I remember watching.
Most of it ages really well, except parts of it.
Yeah, that's some of the casting. Yeah, but I remember when I kind of lost my lid when they were watching TV, and "You Are So Beautiful" comes on the screen.
I love that song just because for how wholesome it is.
Yeah, or like when he's trying to sing "The Air That I Breathe" by the Hollies, and he just has the bubbles
soap bubbles.
The soap bubbles, because they put
those little
soap in his
sight
drink.
gags.
Yeah.
It's really a nice introduction to just great script writing, great comedy, and then of course, as I mentioned before, all the the proper cameos. You got the Master of the Schwartz himself as the bank teller. You got
Whoopi Goldberg.
You got Mrs. Marty McFly as the ballet instructor.
Leah Thompson, yeah.
You've got the mermaid from Splash as the school teacher.
Daryl Hannah.
The nun from Sister Act as Buckwheat's mother.
Whoopi Goldberg.
I forgot about her.
Norm from Cheers is the guy that works at the lumber store.
George Wendt, yep.
And some guy that was president of the United States for 4 years a while back, as I'm sure Evan will remind everybody.
And yeah,
I'm sure he reminded
and
himself.
everyone else.
Yes.
That was as Waldo's father. I think this is a great example of just it's sort of like an ensemble, like film of sorts, but I think especially just it's fun to go back to because I find something new in each viewing, and it's a kids movie that I don't see that much of today, but I'm sure it's just kids films today are building off of things like this, and I believe it's streaming on Peacock if people do want to watch it. I mean, I own a VHS copy myself, but I would be lying if I said that I feel like it should have just been a standalone idea, because they did try to make a sort of direct-to-video follow-up of sorts 20 years later. Didn't go that well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, the Little Rascals saved the day.
Jenna Ortega is in that.
I was gonna.
But unfortunately, she doesn't dance to the Cramps, though. So I feel
Josh,
like it would have been boosted if it
that was a missed
something.
opportunity.
I was gonna ask you guys, how would you guys feel about a reboot? But then it's like, oh wait, no, they did kind of.
Well, you say that, but I also feel that given another given another few years, maybe Peacock will do another original exclusive movie reboot or series or something.
Yeah, that's the thing, because in the 90s it was very popular to take very old properties from the golden age of television and just revamp it for a modern audience. You had Leave It to Beaver and Beverly Hillbillies and the Addams Family. And some of them are good, most of them weren't, but I remember this one was very it was a very nostalgic trip for me, and I always look back at it quite fondly.
The Addams Family is a topic for another time, because I just reminded myself of the TV show instead of the movies. That's where my mind goes.
Yeah.
I think why most people might consider this a little bit underrated is just, again, the source material wasn't exactly something that a lot of kids already knew, but the parents did. And it was funny that the way The Simpsons even homaged it years later when they made Moe apparently part of it. It's fascinating to me. And I think box office wise, it only earned about $10 million during its opening weekend, which was good enough for the time, but it's grossed about $67.3 million worldwide, so it's not a bomb by any means, but I'd say it's a modest success. So I feel like it flew under the radar compared to other major films of 1994.
That's compared to The Lion King, which was the ultimate family film of that year.
Yeah, big competition for that year. Yeah. It's a rough time, but yeah, I still think it holds up pretty well. In fact, I would watch it again.
I've seen this movie twice, and
I've seen it a few times.
But here's the
Me
kicker:
too.
the first time I saw it, I was 7 or 8. The second time I saw it, I was 13, and I've only seen bits and pieces of it since. Lyle wanted to remind me during the Trump years that he was in the movie. So
everyone was referencing Home Alone 2. I had to balance.
You had to be creative.
Nature.
Yeah, that's the thing. You gotta give people equal meme material to work with.
You can't just pick.
And
I
just think it's hilarious that he would be the rich kid's dad.
Remember that outtake when he's trying to take someone's popcorn and he just scoops a hand into someone else's box and eats it? And I'm just
Trump does that?
He does that in the outtakes.
The
in the
bloopers
end
at the end credits.
Yeah.
I can.
Very
I can
apropos.
See that.
I think another reason why I love this so much is that they do repurpose a lot of the scenes in the film are reused from aspects of the shorts themselves.
That's true.
If you look at it online, there's a more detailed list as to what's referring to what, but that's a nice sort of nod to people that have seen the original. So it's clear that there was a lot of love for the original stuff and a lot of care taken to, as Lyle said, updated for a more contemporary audience at that time. And now that we're seeing remakes in the 2020s of things from the 90s and 2000s, maybe the old will be new again, and we'll see another sort of style of this again.
Now, on our 94th episode, Josh, thank you for picking something from the year 1994.
There you go.
I know. It's Lyle said we weren't gonna do that, and then I jinxed it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but it was great fun.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Alright,
So what's your first one, Lyle?
I have a good segue for this one. So you want to talk about old and young and nostalgia, and I guess we kind of tapped into Tim Burton when we mentioned the Wednesday show. I'm going to talk about a work of his from the very early 2000s. Now it's interesting because I find like a lot of Tim Burton fans, they like to put it into a box. There was the 80s stuff, going into the 90s stuff, and it seems like after like, I don't know, maybe Sleepy Hollow or Mars Attacks, people just kind of fall off. And there's this one film he did shortly after Planet of the Apes, which I don't want to watch, that I think he actually really came to his own.
No one does.
No one does. Kind of stepped out of his wheelhouse and made a drama that I think is actually maybe not underappreciated, maybe not underappraised, but definitely overlooked. And that film is Big Fish.
Big Fish.
No ponds to be found, though.
No, well, yeah. You can't grow in a small pond, as the film likes to say. Evan, Josh, have either of you seen this?
I've heard of it. I don't think I've seen it in full. I remember seeing the poster for it when it came out.
I feel so bad, Lyle. I have seen bits and pieces of it, but I want to buckle down and actually like sit through the whole thing because my mom did rent it when it was new, and at the time, like some of it the visuals looked really fascinating. But I just had when I was a kid when she rented it, and I just couldn't follow the story.
Yeah,
so
it's not really
I kind of
for
tapped
kids. But ultimately, if I had to describe it, it's essentially like a father-son story about this man, Edward Bloom, who basically has he's almost like a legend. He tells all of his stories to his son as he grows up about how he had all these amazing adventures, and he talks very much like everything in his life is like a tall tale, like everything's hyperbolic and fantastical, and it's like something you would tell a 5-year-old. But the son, as he grows up and he grows older and starts to have a family of his own, he realizes that he doesn't really know the true meaning behind his father's life, or he doesn't know much about what he did.
And the son is played by the master of the high ground himself, right?
No, actually, the father is he's played by two people. He's played by Albert Finney, who does he's the older version, and the young version of his father is played by Ewan McGregor.
Okay.
Who and we see him go through his life as he goes through all these experiences, and the son is actually played by Billy Crudup, who you know as Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen. So yeah, it's nice because the movie is very, very well put together. I think all the flashback scenes really do a great job of selling us on the absurdity and the larger than life tales that his father would tell. And I gotta say, there are shots in this film that would not feel out of place in like a Coen Brothers production. It reminds me a lot of Brother, Where Art Thou, for example.
I was just about to make that comparison.
You know what? I can see that connection, actually, yeah.
And, it's funny to see someone like Tim Burton go into this, because he's like the gothic guy. And he goes from goth to southern goth. And we have...
Which is interesting
so it's more colorful goth, basically.
Did Sweeney Todd come after this?
Yes. I think Sweeney Todd was 2005, this is 2003.
Yes, it came out after.
So he went right back to his roots with Sweeney Todd, but... Yeah.
Yes,
But, you know, it's nice for directors to have, like, a detour every so often and, you know, try on new themes.
I agree. This is an interesting detour, because the movie... I kind of feel sad for saying this, but Tim Burton himself lost both his parents during the production of this film. Between 2000, when the rights were being discussed, to 2002 when he shot this. So he connected with it a lot. The screenwriter himself connected with it a lot because his John August, his father and him never really connected, and he ended up losing him around the time. So it's almost cathartic for the both of them to have made this. If I had to compare it to anything, it's sort of like Forrest Gump in that it has like this real wholesome sentimentality to it. I know some people might be put off by that, but honestly, it's really refreshing. There's this beautiful scene.
I just remember. Yeah. So I think that's in terms of like its story structure. Yes, I would. From what I have seen of Big Fish, because remember I haven't seen the whole thing.
Sorry, quick fact check. Sweeney Todd, the movie came out in 2007. Still after, but wanted
so
to
yeah,
correct.
The point still stands. Comparing Big Fish to Forrest Gump, I feel like in terms of story structure, yeah, it makes sense. But like, Forrest Gump is easily more grounded in reality. Big Fish is very surreal, and that's what Tim Burton. And honestly, Tim Burton is perfect for that because he does surrealism.
Well, that's the thing. Tim Burton's brand of surrealism works in certain cases. It works in Big Fish and the usual sort of gothic flair that he's known for. It doesn't work in Dumbo.
No, and that's weird.
But that's another
it's funny because Danny DeVito plays a ringmaster in that movie, but in this movie he also plays a ringmaster who just so happens to be a werewolf.
Wow.
So
anyways, I started howling.
So anyways, I started chomping. I took garbage and I threw it everywhere. Danny DeVito has a lot of fun in this. Actually, speaking of the cast alone, you get a lot of good old-fashioned Burton regulars, but you also have like Helena Bonham Carter's there obviously, and she's very good in it.
Robert Guillaume.
Yeah, Robert Guillaume, Missy Pyle, Matthew McGrory, who I thought was really great. He's like a misunderstood giant character. And Deep Roy.
Is he is that man an actual like tall person?
Yes, he is.
Yes. Rest in peace.
7'6", and yeah, he did pass away shortly after this film was made.
Man.
But he's very good in it. And you have Deep Roy. Also, you have Steve Buscemi as a poet who lives in this like kind of like almost like a ghost town, like just like this place in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a swamp that's very peaceful and serene. That the main character is almost Edward Bloom's almost seduced to live there, but he's like, no, I got more things in life to experience. I can't settle down yet. Sorry. But Steve Buscemi, who he encounters later in the movie at a bank, and it's like, oh hey, you left Seance too? And it's like, yeah, I did, and I'm a bank robber now. So if you ever got blue balls from Reservoir Dogs for not seeing Steve Buscemi rob the place, then here you go.
Oh, that's actually really I didn't even think of that. That's not nice. Good for him.
Yeah, exactly. He's moving up in the world. But yeah, exactly. In terms
of Lyle, there's some young girl in here playing a young Ruthie who basically set the world on fire a few years later. I think her name was Miley Cyrus.
Miley Cyrus is in this?
Yes.
Oh,
one of her first major roles.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't even put two and two together. That's crazy. Wow. Oh, and you also, fun fact: have any of you watched The Office?
I want to.
Are we talking the UK one or the American one?
The American one.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have Roy from The Office playing the typical rival, like, get your hands off my girl kind of guy. I swear to God, the same thing happened in The Office, where like the main character steals the girl away from him. He's just forever pegged as the cuck in every single movie he's in, and I thought that was funny. He's a good actor, though. I liked him in Brightburn. In any case, what else can I really say? One thing I really like about this movie is how it's fun. It's very leisurely. It has a lot of imagination. But there's also like the secondary story that takes place in the present day in 2000, where Billy Crudup is trying to like determine his father's life and what it all actually meant, because he's been basically told all these tall tales his whole life, and he's kind of frustrated. It's like, Dad, just tell me the truth. What is your life? Like, just stop telling these tall stories. It's embarrassing. Like, I'm not a kid anymore. Come on, I want to learn more about you. And the film has a really interesting thing where it's like, life in and of itself is pretty ordinary. Most people usually don't have these like absurd amount of things happen, and to have just a little bit of embellishment, to have a little bit of imagination and spontaneity, it makes the story a lot more interesting than it otherwise would be. It's like when you tell a tale and you tell like life stories over and over again, things change, and eventually the facts get a little buried away, and you end up with the bigger story, which is a lot more interesting than how it actually
also
happens.
as I found that even in my own life, like, there are things that there are memories I have from my childhood that, like, let's say I'm sharing them with, like, Josh, for example. Like, if Josh has the same memory, he may remember something different about it than I do, because our memories are ever evolving. And one of the things that actually kind of scares me with age is that, like, will I look back on some things as, like, more, like, horrific or more, like, dramatic than they actually were? Like, but it's kind of interesting how, like, some details, like, evolve with the human mind in terms of memories that we hold.
And especially when you pass them on to other people and they tell stories and become something of a legend, which the film handles nicely as well.
Well, there's like a difference between, how, like, fables, like tall tales in the past were passed on from generation to generation, but I think a theme with Big Fish that I really appreciate is the fact that, like, as you grow up, you start to see your parents as just regular people that lived lives well before you, and you're basically trying to come into yours while also trying to understand more about theirs. And it's something that I think all of us go through when we get to a certain point in our adult lives.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's exactly what I want to talk about in this podcast. I know Cody loves this movie a lot too. I saw his Letterboxd review of it. He also thinks it's quite underrated. And what I think it's underrated is it has a really good score on Rotten Tomatoes. It's pretty well beloved by most people. But in the grand scheme of, like, Tim Burton's filmography, I never hear people really mention it. And it's probably because it's not quite in his wheelhouse. It is very different looking and different feeling, and the cast isn't a whole bunch of his regulars. It's slightly outside of his tool shed. But I like that. I think it's a very mature film. I think it's very well done. I would agree that it is one of his last really good films before he kind of went on and just adapted everything and kind of went into, like, a wallpaper mode with his style. But I think it didn't really do that well either. It kind of fell short of expectations, and it didn't get a whole lot of recognition and awards. Actually, I think the one award it did get was a Best Score by Danny Elfman, but that was just I mean, it was nominated. It didn't win. Danny Elfman, come on.
It didn't win anything.
Give this guy, like, an achievement or something. Like, all these scores he's done over the past few years.
Pearl Jam did a song for this movie.
Yes, Man of the Hour. That is a very good song to end the movie with. Like, I remember as the credits were rolling and you hear Eddie Vedder singing, I'm just like, yeah.
Eddie Vedder has really good choice in movie scores between this and then Into the Wild later on. I feel like this guy could just do some arranging.
Cody mentioned that in another underrated podcast. That's funny. Yeah, but no, for all you Tim Burton aficionados who haven't seen Big Fish, I highly encourage it. I think you two would really get a lot out of it. It's
I'm gonna check it out, because even as I want to sort of piggyback on your point about it being sort of a weird left turn in his filmography at that point, because even you look at the ones in between, this was right after Planet of the Apes and right before Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I see why this would get overlooked.
Yeah, it tends to get passed off a lot, but I think it's
just fascinating to see, because, like, there was Big Fish, and then 11 years later there was Big Eyes.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. Which is also a left
turn.
I know a lot of people actually say that one's not bad either. I haven't seen it yet, so I can't judge, but I want to see that one too. Bad. Tim Burton, maybe you should just go back to making movies with the word big in the title. There you go.
Yeah.
Free your creative juices.
It's funny
rejuvenate.
Little Big Something.
Yeah. It's funny because
Little Big Planet by Tim Burton.
With Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, just like
because they made the Sackboy game a few years ago. Sony, maybe you should give him a call again.
Yeah, it's like with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's like, I thought we don't talk about that one either.
Well, there's going to be the Wonka one, right? So people will forget about that.
Fair enough.
So many stringing connections and everything.
His big stupid eyes watched me make chocolate.
I'm gonna leave it at that. I think you guys are pretty enticed now, and I don't want to spoil too much else. So just give it a try. It's a very beautiful film, and I am glad I found it when I did, because it came at just the right time in my life.
Great.
Thank you, Lyle. Very thorough.
Very thorough.
So we're now on round 2, and I gotta be honest, there's a theme for this round. Disney. Now, Disney, they make masterpieces, but their films aren't always interpreted as masterpieces. And each one of us is going to kick off. All these movies are movies I've seen, and I do think they all have merit. And yeah, case in point, I'm going to kick things off. We're going to go back to 2001 with Atlantis, the Lost Empire. Talk about fables. Oh my god. So,
this is like Disney steampunk for kids.
well,
Essentially, it's like a kid's first guide to steampunk.
Not entirely for kids.
There's a little
It's
bit of it
pretty
in there. A little bit.
It's a little edgy, but yeah.
well, so no, but like, I had up until this point, I'd seen Disney like go dark before, but not. I've seen Disney be whimsical, but what's so cool about Atlantis is they take
Atlantis Morissette?
yeah, well, yeah.
Now I'm just imagining that one scene with "You Ought to Know" over it.
Oh lord. So, which scene is that?
Later on, when you continue, and I'll let you know.
Okay, so basically, plot is this. So like, Atlantis, legendary lost continent. That surprisingly, not many filmmakers have tackled Atlantis. I mean, like, maybe.
They had Aquaman and Black Panther.
Okay, yeah, no, that's right.
So
no, but see, they did it before. It was cool.
Yeah, no. So
those are superhero movies. We don't talk about them.
Yeah,
Watch our last.
Yeah, no. So
podcast.
up until, yeah, like
we talk about 2 Marvel movies.
That's kind of my
MCU.
point. That's kind of my point. Like with Aquaman, and to a lesser extent Wakanda Forever. Yeah, like Atlantis, the legendary lost continent, hasn't really like been explored in film before.
Okay, so you mean like a movie that's not based on superheroes? It really just kind of delves into the history. A movie that's not based on superheroes,
because the characters
and the
in this movie
surrounding it,
yeah, the characters in this movie are not superheroes. They're people. Like they're just average. They're average people. I mean,
well, they're written by Joss Whedon, so I mean, nowadays they all sound like superheroes.
Thanks for reminding me of that.
No, so this is the cool part. So, Atlantis is turned into sinks into the ocean 10,000 years ago, and in the early 20th century, you cut to Washington D.C., where a neurotic linguistics expert who also mines a museum's boiler named Milo Thatch He's super passionate about finding Atlantis, but of course he's seen as crazy and in over his head. Yeah. Pun intended. In over his head.
Unwell, in too deep. Somebody please stop me.
Yeah. Man, we're just killing it with our puns. So, he's seen as kind of crazy and nonsensical and
delusional.
Outlandish.
Yeah, they don't take him seriously.
But here's the thing: despite the
1920 something.
But here's the thing: 1914 to be exact.
Oh, even earlier than that. It's been a year or two since I've seen this. Even though the last time I saw it was with our friend group.
But yeah, so the point is, one day despite the fact that he's seen as crazy, he actually doesn't seem that crazy of a guy. He seems just very passionate, which I kind of like, because typically when you have Disney tackle a character who is perceived to be crazy, like Belle's father from Beauty and the Beast, like they they make him a little too like obnoxious. But with Milo, like Milo is super relatable.
Well, that's what that benefactor saw in him when they dug him up, and they were like, "Hey,
yeah,
you're just the guy we need for this expedition."
That's right. So an old friend of his grandfather's. An old friend of his grandfather's, who I guess has an unlimited amount of money, has been
insert your own modern reference for that here.
So he funds an expedition to go find Atlantis, and he gifts Milo a book called The Shepherd's Journal, which basically
The Shepherd's Journal is just, I mean, it's not quite on the level of other like important books like the Necronomicon or anything, but just the lore that it contains, and especially the Atlantean language they made specifically for this, they work it into the sort of the motivations for finding Atlantis very well.
There are 3 Star Trek references. Speaking of the language, there are 3.
Marvel,
it reminds me.
Star Trek. Okay, we've checked all the boxes.
So there are 3 Star Trek references in this movie. They are the man who created all the languages for Star Trek made the language for this movie, and I believe the same linguist also made the Na'vi language in Avatar.
Yes. You know, I was gonna say I feel like again, a lot of crossover. You know, blue people, languages.
Not only
oh
that,
God.
Not only that, but so the other Star Trek reference is the commander of the mission. His middle name is Tiberius, and also
his first name is Lyle too.
Lyle Tiberius Rourke.
Oh man,
I feel like you ranked him in that special.
I did. I liked him a lot.
Lyle,
he's a good villain. He likes
Commander
it when he
Rourke,
wins.
He's never called.
I think he's called Lyle exactly once. They just call him Rourke most of the time. I think when they introduce him.
Oh yeah.
Lyle Tiberius Rourke. Yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, so and then of course you have the king of, and then the king of Atlantis is played by Leonard Nimoy.
Can we go into the crew?
Yes.
That's
we'll need a crack
of
team of
film.
experts.
That's the juice of the film. This crew.
Yeah. So
Every
basically,
crew member has their own quirks, but they also play off each other so well, like with their dynamics.
Like okay, so you have the gross one who Gaetan Moliere, and you have Doctor. You have Dr. Sweet.
Joshua Sweet.
His name's Sweet. Joshua Sweet, medical officer. And then you have
Vinny who steals the show.
Vinny.
Hey, look, I built the bridge. I made the bridge.
Do you know what my favorite? Do you know what my favorite line of Vinny is in the whole movie?
Which?
We've done a lot of things we're not proud of. Robbing graves, plundering tombs, double parking. But nobody got hurt. Well, maybe somebody got hurt, but nobody we knew.
I always like the line where he's like talking, when I get this money, I'm gonna have a flower shop. I'm gonna work Monday, Tuesday, not Wednesday. But, maybe Wednesday. No, not Wednesday. He just rambles.
I love Don Novello as Vinny because he improv'd everything, and if only everybody could get VA work by just improving.
Yeah.
Yeah, he sold it. I believe it, but I also can't believe it.
And so yeah,
you forgot
Audrey.
several. How about Audrey?
Oh yeah, I love Audrey.
Michelle Rodriguez at the same year. Basically a Michelle Rodriguez character the same year Michelle Rodriguez was introduced to the world.
Yeah, exactly. She's awesome. I always think, like, if Veronica and I want to do a costume, cosplay, we could do, like, couples cosplay. I could be Milo and she could be Audrey.
That would be cool.
It would just give her an excuse to hit me a lot, though.
Two for flinching.
And then, of course, we've got everybody's most surly telephone operator.
Mrs. Packard.
Yes.
Yeah. And, and the chef, Cookie. Last performance by
Jim Varney. It's Slinky Dog if he made gruel.
Yeah.
I got two
ingredients. And of course,
you know what's
funny? That's somebody else.
When I was a kid, I loved Cookie, but I didn't understand a single thing he said.
It's Ernest. It's Ernest if he was, if he was a line cook.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
But anyway, so the plot.
And how about femme fatale here, Helga?
Helga Sinclair.
Oh, man.
Do you know her first line in the movie is, Milo's like, how'd you get in here? I came down the chimney. Ho, ho, ho.
21st century Disney.
No, that's great because that just goes to show that as soon as you see Helga, you know that, like, this isn't your typical kid-friendly Disney film. There's some edge to this, and there's some innuendo.
We gotta give props to Mike Mignola for the design work on a lot of these characters.
Yes.
From his work,
even though this is the most CGI they'd used to that point, it still looks beautiful.
From his with all the work he did for Hellboy, like, you can definitely see, like, a lot of comparisons.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and here's the thing, like, I love the atmosphere, and by the way, I haven't even gone into
there's some breathtaking shots in this movie.
Yeah.
Like,
when it pans when they're undersea and it pans around when he's looking in the little that little round part of the front of the submarine.
Yeah.
That's a great sweeping shot.
That's
super iconic.
there are actually two shots in this movie that I would consider
all the underwater stuff in general, like that's like when you're a kid and you see stuff like that, the ocean just looks amazing.
Now, did you guys see this in the theater?
Yes.
Yes, I believe I did.
This came out right at the
so
end of third grade. It was fantastic.
If I didn't have, if I wasn't scared of movie theaters at the time and didn't suffer from sensory overload, I would have seen this in a heartbeat. Because,
Yeah. I feel the same way about
would've
Treasure
loved
Planet.
to have
I didn't see Treasure Planet in theaters. And
Oh,
I
Treasure
regret it
Planet.
ever
That's
since.
another underrated movie.
Yeah, yeah.
I would
yeah.
have. I regret not seeing Atlantis in the theater. But that on that note, the reason why I think this is underrated, it bombed, and critics weren't
Yeah,
kind to it either.
huge bomb.
Oh, it did. And it bombed so much that Disney quietly canceled a planned animated TV spin-off.
Is that
Though it
why?
did get a direct-to-video sequel in 2003.
Is that why
was gonna
Milo's
say.
Return looks like a TV show more than a movie?
Yeah, Atlantis
Yeah.
Milo's Return has that, like, the television animation department quality.
Yeah. Oh, and can we talk about the Atlantean character?
Oh, yeah, how about that?
let's
How
get
about
it.
those Atlanteans? Everybody's favorite resident VA, Cree Summer.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's Kita.
Kidagakash. That's her full name. Kinabish Naga. Hey,
Disney
yeah,
princess who's coming into her own lately. She's getting a huge revival.
Yeah, so honestly, she's great. And
The whole, all the Atlantis scenes, just like seeing, how the Atlanteans interact with each other, the crystals, the technology
Yes.
of how they're like fob keys basically. They put them into their machines to power them up, and they have supernatural powers with the floating not idol heads, ancestor heads, for lack of a better term.
They're the kings of the past. The kings. Of the past.
The kings. Yeah, and they're basically the idea is they float around, and that's sort of like the quote unquote shield that protects the island.
Yeah. Well, essentially, yeah. So basically, that's another thing I want to talk about. So, in lore of Atlantis, like right around the time I saw this movie, my mom explained to me that my nana believed in Atlantis and probably would have loved to have seen the movie. She passed away before the movie came out, but
that's too bad.
When I always talk to my mom about Atlantis, like spiritual people truly believe that Atlantis did possess like a power source, but no one. But what adds like some fun to the lore in real life is that no one really knows what the Atlanteans were capable of when they were around, if they were around. But Disney's interpretation of it leaves so much to the imagination because, like, they possessed crystals with healing powers. Their soul power, like, was the heart of Atlantis.
Like the heart of Atlantis is literally something they wear around their neck.
Well, yeah, no, but like the crystals connect to like the main power source, and the idea is that Atlantis is not just like ruined. It's not just ruins sitting on the bed of the Atlantic Ocean. It's like a thriving society that actually is like recovering from the disaster of a lifetime. Because,
yeah,
like,
it's kind of like El Dorado. Like it's this mythical city that everyone
Oh, that's
has
another
a...
underrated kids movie.
Yeah. I want to mention.
They
I want to give
both
a quick shout
The
out.
Road to El Dorado and Atlantis came out.
I gotta
roughly
rewatch
the
The
same
Road to
time.
El Dorado. That's great. It's got
it's
Elton
great.
John music. It's got good comedy. It's got good setting. Which, speaking of, as a side note for DreamWorks movies, I almost picked The Prince of Egypt.
Oh yeah. Well, that one a lot of people have huge praise for. So
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of why I didn't pick it. But also, it's like scope and a little too dark at times. But yes, back
Well,
to Under the Sea.
The Aztecs will be mentioned later on in this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
The Aztecs will return.
So Atlantis, but what honestly, like, once you understand once they establish quite brilliantly the way like the world of Atlantis works, and then they establish that Rourke is a villain, like, you really, it's one of those movies where, kind of like an Avatar, where like the expeditioners are just there to exploit the
Greed. Yeah.
They're there for greed, and they're there to exploit the world for the resources, and just to have Rourke be such a bastard, like, it really works. And also, I'm gonna say this, like, he dies a pretty disturbing death.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
he does.
Yeah.
Crystallized.
No,
Let's
honestly,
just say the heart consumed him.
Yeah, no, like, the very thing he was after wound up consuming him in the most literal way possible.
Yeah,
And,
Milo.
Yeah.
Milo,
by the way,
you
like,
devil.
wasn't it Cody at one point on this show that was like, Milo is actually fucking evil because at least, like, because at least when you have a Disney protagonist like in jeopardy with their life hanging up by a thread and the villain's about to kill them, the villain usually like slips and falls, and the villain's
but
blade
no,
is like
Milo actually does
Milo
a fatal
slices Rourke's wrist. Like, on
that's
purpose.
The thing. That's the whole thing
Milo
about this
used
movie.
crystal.
Yeah.
It's super effective.
That's the whole thing about this movie is that it really does not.
It doesn't
bat an eye when it actually shows like people dying or like entire ships getting destroyed.
Oh yeah, there was that one with they lost a bunch of crew members like almost immediately.
Yeah, because of this giant whale that they encounter.
The Leviathan.
Yeah.
See, honestly, everyone talks about the Kraken in Pirates of the Caribbean. The Leviathan in Atlantis: The Lost Empire was a true sea monster.
Super cool. That thing, like, honestly, what added more mystery to it was like the first time I saw it, I thought the Leviathan was a creature, but when Milo
and then you found out it was actually just a roller coaster this whole time.
When Milo says, "Jiminy Christmas, it's a machine," and I was like, "How could it be a machine?" And then I realized the fact that the Atlanteans tasked a giant machine to guard the entrance to their lost civilization.
More machine than man now.
It goes to see how advanced they are and how powerful they are.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of casualties in this movie, and there's no musical numbers or anything. It's very atypical for a Disney film, especially a feature-length animated one, which is probably
and
why.
Especially for one that like they started developing this as soon as The Hunchback of Notre Dame wrapped. So this is in the works since the mid '90s. So.
Wow.
I mean, I can understand why they decided to pull no punches, because this was still in, like, the 90s was where, there was a lot of attitude and edge, and they took a lot of risks.
Yeah, no, this was definitely a risky project. And, I'm very glad that it's getting a reappraisal. Like, it's starting to come into its own. People are liking it, and it's becoming, it's definitely one of my favorite Disney projects. There's
even talk that, it
Disney
could
Plus
get
series.
It could There's talk that it could get a live action remake. And
no, I stand corrected. No, leave it exactly as it is.
I just don't get it. Like it didn't do well in the box office, but I think it works well on its own. I don't think it needs to be improved in any way.
So if they here's the thing. There was talk that
we have Avatar. Why do we need a live action Atlantis?
And James still has 3 more Avatar movies to make. Just pretend that's one of those.
Yeah, I mean, we have Avatar.
Because everything is going to change when the Fire Nation attacks.
Yeah. or when they go down in the ground, it's like, oh hey, Earth. It's got ground.
Yeah. At this rate, well, you know what's interesting? Because there's a lot of Jules Verne inspiration. Disney did a movie of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, I think in the 50s. Yeah, and I think for a lot of kids yes, I remember, I think it was 55, I'm going to say. It's on Disney Plus, so I know that much.
Kirk
but
Douglas,
I feel like Atlantis: The Lost Empire is sort of like kids' introduction to that sort of science fiction and sort of Jules Verne-esque storytelling. But I do have a couple of other neat factoids about how they did try and promote it. They used a lot of internet marketing for this. In fact, it was among Disney's first major attempts to use internet marketing. They had, of course, the Kellogg's breakfast cereal promo, which shout out to Search for the Journal, which is probably one of the best, promo
I remember that
games
game.
You could ever get.
That game scared the shit out of me, man.
It is pretty dark because like those things come out of nowhere.
Cliffs, and it scared the hell out of me when I was a kid.
And then the full game, I think, is called Trial by Fire, but they're both on the Internet Archive. You can probably find gameplay footage of it on YouTube.
That's right. So that was.
And they had Happy Meal toys too, and like packaging
awesome.
and in-store decor over there.
I remember I got the Happy Meal toy of the submarine, which, by the way, the submarine is called the Ulysses.
Yes,
Ulysses. Yeah.
I guess Ulysses S. Grant. Yes, because that was. Oh, and they actually advertised it through cell phone networks too. People could download games based on the movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was some pretty relevant stuff at that point.
Yeah, I can see to Evan's point why this didn't perform so well, because it's competition with both Shrek and the recently released Lara Croft Tomb Raider
Good
movie.
Lord.
Now I forgot to mention we talked about like the characters, we talked about the environment, we talked about the action. James Newton Howard's score is one of the best he's ever done. Like,
I agree.
This is a man. Whenever I hear a James Newton Howard Disney score, like from Dinosaur, Atlantis is probably my favorite.
I'm gonna rewatch Dinosaur. I promise soon I'm going to. I've been putting it off for like a few years now, but that 2000 and 2001 it was like Dinosaur, some other ones. Atlantis.
I have both those scores on. Scores on my phone.
He does a lot of work with M. Night Shyamalan too, if I'm not mistaken.
What I love about James Newton Howard's score is he combines military marches, like how you would see like an army above Earth like marching, with crystallized chimes, and they mesh the two together when they find Atlantis. It's actually a really cool combination.
You were talking about, the movie, Lyle was talking about how the computer game would always scare him and falling off the cliffs. And obviously the movie pulls no punches when it comes to the violence factor, but in terms of the creepiness factor, when Kida gets like absorbed by the king heads, even the scene in the trailer when she's saying the Atlantean and then her eyes just open and they're just blue and you don't see any pupils, like that would scare some kids.
No, that scared me. Like,
yeah, that's like that's where the supernatural elements really go over the top.
Yeah, that was really cool.
There is no God, only Kida. No, there is no Kida, only Zool.
but what scared me is like when remember the scene that made. Do you remember the scene where the king explains how the crystal works and what it is? And it's not just the crystal isn't just a crystal, it's a thriving consciousness, and basically
it's unobtainium.
Yeah, and so basic, and what the most haunting line that the king says is, if Kida remains bonded to the crystal, she could be lost to it forever, and that really adds some stake to the final fight. So
yeah.
Like, because Milo not only has something to go... He's not just saving Atlantis, he's saving, like, the woman who introduced him to Atlantis, so...
It's another example of, power corrupts.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. I like Milo a lot as a character. Michael J. Fox, like, his voice was just perfect for this
man.
role.
Yes.
And then you have James Garner as Commander Rourke.
Yeah, classic actor from the golden age of Hollywood, just knocks it out of the park.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad you've talked
Atlantis
about this one.
Is a masterpiece, a hidden masterpiece. I'm so glad it's getting like the following it deserves.
Yeah, it's quite a gem.
Please don't make a live action remake of this though. You're already doing Lilo and Stitch soon.
I'm not looking forward to that one.
They're just gonna cast Tom Holland to play Milo, and that ticks me off. When you
God damn it, Lyle.
But here's the thing:
Andrew Garfield is
the worst part.
Is
Andrew. Yeah, make Andrew Garfield Milo Thatch.
He's the right age, the right type of body type. I don't know. I mean, you don't have to do it, but if you're gonna do it right.
Speaking of Disney movies that should never ever have live action remakes ever.
They should never ever be remade.
What?
Hit it, Tom Jones. What's his name? Kuzco. He's the king of the world, Kuzco.
Is he hippo?
Ha! Boom, baby. The Emperor's New Groove.
No! You threw off my groove.
I'm sorry, you threw off the Emperor's Groove. Sorry.
You were saying? But Evan and I basically have this film committed to memory.
We do.
Like 2000 for me was Dinosaur, The Emperor's New Groove, a few other things, but this is just like when you read about just the production history that this film went through.
Yeah.
It's a miracle it even came out at all, but like it is fascinating.
Do you know that?
Yes,
obviously you know.
I am aware of the production, which that's part of the great story of this, that it went through so many hurdles just to get made. And the fact that it's gotten such a cult following over the years since and it's actually spawned somewhat of a franchise, believe it or not.
Yeah, with Emperor's
New
New School,
a TV show, all that stuff. So
yeah, for sure.
Now, I guess to explain the Emperor's New Groove, you actually have to go back to 1994, circa roughly, when production began under the name Kingdom of the Sun.
Right.
Which was going to be an entirely different set film where they actually traveled to Machu Picchu to study Inca artifacts and all this sort of architecture and history of that people. And it became something entirely different. I believe the final setting of the Emperor's New Groove is somewhere in... It is still Incan culture.
Yeah.
But the story at its core is a selfish emperor gets his comeuppance in the most hilarious of ways, and a bromance is born,
A llama? He's supposed to be dead!
Yeah, weird.
The poison that we were supposed to use to kill Cusco. The end is poison. That poison?
Yes, that poison. Oh my god, it's so quotable.
We'll just quote. No, there's a reason why Josh and I were able to commit this to memory. It's so
watched
quotable.
it so many times.
It is funny. It is probably, without a doubt, the funniest Disney movie.
Absolutely. Where
I
Lost
agree.
Empire was like one of the most violent Disney movies at that time. The Emperor's New Groove is probably the funniest, just the most pure, humorous Disney film of that time.
Unquestionably, yes, I would agree.
I love the fact. Okay, I love that they just kept when the project changed direction, they made it a comedy and they just stick to it through and through. It's not just okay. It's not. They could have made it like Aladdin, where it's only funny while he's a llama, and like they could have had it be like a genie situation where it's only a comedy when. It's an
quick
epic
side note. If anyone does want to find out more of the detailed production history of what became The Emperor's New Groove, there's a documentary on YouTube called The Sweatbox. Check it out.
Mm-hmm.
I'll check it out.
I believe Evan's talked about that.
It was made by Sting's wife, which we'll get back to Sting soon.
Oh yeah. Now Sting made not one but 2 fabulous songs for this movie.
I have a soft spot for My Funny Friend and Me still.
Oh, that's a great one.
That's a good one, yeah.
I love it.
It's a different side to Sting, but if you've known like his jazzier solo stuff, it actually fits right in.
No, but the thing is, like, when I think of Sting is usually very jazzy, but when
reggae too,
jazzy and reggae. When he takes on My Funny Friend and Me for this movie, it's very popish, but it works. And
again, it's the same approach that Phil Collins does for a lot of his musical work.
Well,
that's why
on the contrary,
I sort of lumped this in with Tarzan a little bit.
But here's the thing. So going on that note,
with,
Phil Collins not only wrote the songs for Tarzan, he scored the whole film too.
Right.
And Sting did 2 songs for this movie, and he also collaborated with composer John Debney. John Debney's score, by the way, is awesome. Like that, my favorite track is the one that takes place in the chase scene, and it's called "Run Llama Run." Oddly enough.
Oh, yeah. Now, Cusco as a character, obviously, he's got his foible. I mean, I love the switch, like the gotcha of that opening scene. You know, it's all depressing, and it's like. It's another one of those, yep, that's me, you're wondering how I ended up in the situation kind of things. But, like, they play on that where it's like they go too far back and then it's just like the opening montage is just hilarious, too. Just to see the opulence that he comes from. So you see how he's going to get his comeuppance later on.
Now, here's the thing.
Oh, yeah.
How often... Now, do you know what else is brilliant about this movie?
Which is great. It's rare to see Disney films be that meta.
Yeah.
And be good at it.
Yeah, without being annoying, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll talk about meta for sure later.
And can you believe this came out 6 months before Shrek did? Like, that's incredible to me.
That was around when I was a kid, for sure.
Yeah. So, here's one of the things I love about the Emperor. One of the things I love about the Emperor's New Groove is the added brilliance. Like, okay, up at that. How often have you seen an evil usurper who is jealous of the current ruler try to take the throne from out underneath them? Like, you've seen it in Aladdin, Scar, The Lion King, Aladdin.
It's not a new trope by any means.
It's not a but with Yzma and Kronk, not only are
their
they
chemistry. Every villainous and henchman dynamic should be based around Yzma and Kronk from now on. I'm sorry, Patrick Warburton needs way more of these types of roles. He absolutely steals the show.
Yeah.
By the way,
and Eartha Kitt's just phenomenal too. Like,
now,
she does a great job with Yzma.
Fun fact: Eartha Kitt was attached to this project from its early stages. Like, she was she was the first person cast, and she stayed until it became something completely new.
Good.
David Spade and John Goodman and Patrick Warburton came later, but when the story got reworked into a comedy. But Eartha Kitt was there from the beginning, and she's amazing. But here's the thing: it's done for laughs, and because Cusco was such a jerk, there are moments where you actually kind of root for Yzma. Like, I don't really care. And by the way, when they actually do show her successfully take over the kingdom, nothing really changes except the aesthetic of the palace. Like, Yzma's rule is not distinct from Cusco's rule, because and then there's even a line.
Yeah, it feels hollow in a lot of ways. It's like Nothing actually, it doesn't feel earned per se because nothing really changed.
Well, it's not like The Lion King where Scar takes over and Pride Rock goes to shit.
Maybe she didn't have any greater aspirations. She just wanted to rule the kingdom.
Yeah,
that's true.
Like she didn't think much further about what would happen after.
Yeah, but here's the thing, because it's a reform story, like Kuzco's a villain. Like, I'm not kidding. Kuzco.
Oh, he could totally be a villain if
Kuzco's
he
a
didn't
villain.
go through the
I'd say
trials
he is the villain in his own story for most of it.
Yeah.
And Pacha's just a lovable, humble peasant.
Oh, Pacha.
Really, the crux of the plot is Kuzco wants to build a water park. He wants to pave paradise and put up a water park where Pacha's home is. Pacha, like.
Mitchell.
Lyle.
Oh, and of course, we can't talk up as well about Emperor's New Groove without the memes.
Memes.
When the sun hits those hills just right, it really sings.
Really sings.
Now, Lyle, tell Josh what your father-in-law has to say about Pacha. It's fucking hilarious.
How the hell did Pacha get a wife like that? He's so fat.
I mean, hey.
You know, it's a good thing you're not a big fat guy, or this would be really difficult. Do you know my dad that's my dad's, I don't know why, but that's my dad's favorite line in the movie. He quotes that to me all the time.
Even the side characters have memorable moments too in this, just like Pacha's wife, the kids play a part, the freaking restaurant scene.
Oh my god.
Oh, and Kronk, on second thought, make my potatoes a salad.
Oh god.
You got all that,
like, every little side scene has its own like comedy gold to be found. And of course, Evan, so obviously Kronk and Pacha have to like I mixed it up. Kuzco and Pacha, there we go. It's been a long day. Kuzco and Pacha have to help Kuzco get turned back into a human, and of course they're going through the village, and then they end up tied to a branch, and of course the immortal words, don't tell me. We're about to go over a huge waterfall. Yup. Sharp rocks to the bottom?
Most likely. Bring it on.
Bring it on.
I love how they play on the adventure movie trope. Like, instead of talking,
it's like,
don't tell me. Yeah, we're about to go over a huge rock.
So basically, it's like planes, trains, and automobiles, but in the Incan Empire.
That's a good comparison, Josh. Yes, and
I really have to see planes, trains, and automobiles.
Yeah, that's been brought up a lot ever since the last podcast.
I really like the character of Kronk because it's a meta twist on the henchman where like he's not malicious or anything. He's just doing his job basically.
In fact,
the freaking side plot where he's humming his own theme music and he's trying to looking at him like, what's up with that guy? What's his problem?
It's like, oh god, he's doing his own theme music. Why are we focusing on the bug? Can we go back to me?
Yeah, they literally stopped the movie a few times. Like, he's trying to cross out Pacha.
This story's about me, not him.
Not him.
Me, not him. Winner, loser.
They kind of chill that out after the low point, though.
But it's nice though that like they stop after that point.
It's funny you mentioned that, Law, because they do it even in the low point. Kuzco clashes with the narrator himself.
Yeah, he tells his own self to stop it. You know, he tells it to cut it out. That's pretty cool. It's like in Mulan when they have all the musical numbers, and as soon as they go to that burned village, it's like stop.
There's so many. Even
the story goes in now.
The comedy when Yzma is trying to figure out what to turn Kuzco into. First, I'll turn him into a flea, a harmless little flea, and then I'll put that flea inside of a box, and I'll put that box inside of another box, and then I'll mail that box to myself. And when it arrives, I'll smash it with a hammer. It's brilliant, brilliant, brilliant! I tell you, brilliant.
Or just say on postage.
Of course. How could I forget before that? Pull the lever, Kronk. Wrong lever!
Do we even have that lever?
Faster, Yzma, put your hand here!
We're just gonna quote this thing all night. That's
the best part about it, though. It's so quotable.
Yeah.
It's just, there's like little bits and everything. But I will agree, it's one of the best buddy comedies just because there's adventure and wits bursting at every possible scene.
That whole segment when they're on the bridge broke and they're stuck in a wedge in the cliff and they have to walk together and match rhythmically. It's really it's a beautiful scene of camaraderie. between these two guys who
when
initially
they
don't
walk
like
up
each other.
the like side of the castle at the end too, as it pans out and you see they're doing the back walk up the like face of the figure.
Yeah.
It's reincorporated really well later on.
Just 2 minutes before that, Cusco was gonna leave Pacha for dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
no, that's what he gets.
Yeah.
That's what Cusco. I gotta say, I think
we shook hands on it.
You know the funny thing about shaking hands? You gotta have hands. I gotta say, for David Spade, I think this is definitely one of my favorite roles of his, next to like maybe Tommy.
Which is great because when I think of David Spade in live action, he's typically, with
Adam
the exception
Sandler
of Tommy Boy, he's pretty annoying. But
I mean,
yeah,
that's the thing. Yeah, it's like it's the guy from Tommy Boy, except like it's a little bit
not even.
up.
No, actually, okay. David Spade plays Tommy Boy he plays Tommy in The Emperor's New Groove, and Pacha is David Spade. Sorry, I'm trying to get the dynamics mixed up. So like,
Richard, no. Tommy and Richard.
Yeah, like you have a
This is the
spoiled little
character's
protagonist who runs around thinking he owns everything, and never mind. But yeah, so
and the freaking climax is just hilarious because they do take that potion gimmick.
Oh, they run into the ground.
Nth degree, and it's like. Even after the guards get turned in, it was like, I turned into a cow. Can I go home? Fine, you're excused. Anybody else? No, we're good.
We're good.
Get them. Come on, man. Nobody lives forever. After them.
My favorite one is, we're not getting anywhere with you picking the vials. I'm picking the next one. 5 by me. Give me this one. He turns into a whale. Don't you say a word.
Wait a minute. We have a Leviathan, and now we have another whale. Boy, the whale really is being a relevant character, isn't it?
The whale.
It's a popular animal right now, yes.
Yeah.
Thanks to Avatar.
It sure is.
Thanks to Avatar, and also that Brendan Fraser comeback.
Aronofsky, yeah. Well, that wasn't an actual whale. Let's not be mean.
What's hilarious,
Even
when I told my mom,
music,
hey mom,
like I said, Tom Jones singing the Cusco theme, it was just like, now kids have something else besides the Carlton memes.
The song "Perfect World" it's a great tune. It's very catchy. And
there's a little side in jokes of like Kronk learning to speak squirrel with those squirrel characters. Oh God, the squirrel, the balloon animals, the jaguars,
the devil and angel on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Oh
man.
Point number 2. Look what I can do.
The jump rope scene.
I don't understand what that has to do. No. He has a point. God.
That's all night. I love how many. Yeah.
But I'm having fun. This is too much fun.
A brilliant. What I find so brilliant about this movie, and I think I talked about it 3 years ago, I did like a review one Disney movie a day challenge on my Facebook feed, and one of the things that I actually said, I remember saying about The Emperor's New Groove is, you remember how I said earlier that Cusco's a villain? The movie has 3 villains and 1 good guy, but by the end, it has 3 good guys and 1 villain, because Yzma gets defeated, Kronk has a change of heart, and
that's pretty rare for a Disney villain.
And Cusco reforms. So the movie starts out with 3 villains and ends with 3 good guys. Like that's.
Do you think
Yzma
becoming that? Do you think Yzma becoming
into a cat?
Do you think that's a reference to the fact that Eartha Kitt was one of the original Catwomen?
I think that's exactly what they were going for.
I love the imagery of like when she drinks that last potion. It looks like she turns into like some sort of dragon-esque creature, like Maleficent and Sleeping Beauty, and it's like, and then it pans out, no, she's just a cat.
My voice? Oh well.
Yeah. Oh, the scene that. Yeah, no, the bit where Kronk takes her the fuck out with the trapdoor. What are the odds of that trapdoor?
What are the odds this trapdoor was here?
Yeah, my mom dies laughing at that scene.
But
we should probably
watch it again.
We gotta wind down to a point.
Can I wrap up with the overall legacy of this film?
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. Why do you find this? Yeah.
I find it underrated because again, it came out at a time just before things like films like Shrek and Ice Age would sort of make the animated comedy big again. And ironically, much like another film released in mid-late 2000, The Road to El Dorado, it was embraced by internet culture. As I mentioned, a lot of the memes that have spawned from this, of course, the Just Right gesture in particular. But the fact that Disney seemed to see enough in this film to make a direct-to-video sequel, Kronk's New Groove, in late 2005, which is really nice because you get to see even more of Patrick Warburton, which is great. And they even made a Disney Channel TV series a few years after that, The Emperor's New School.
I remember that,
Between 2006 and 2008.
Wow. It's a long
And
run.
they'd even have Kuzco be a recurring guest on House of Mouse and the direct-to-video film Mickey's Magical Christmas Snowed In at the House of Mouse. And of course, there's been 2 video games to tie into this. The first, of course, was on the PlayStation, developed by Argonaut Games, the same people that developed Star Fox and the first Croc game.
Oh, not bad.
And then there was a second game for the Game Boy Color. Some characters also appear in Disney Magic Kingdoms, which is one of those world builder games for mobile devices. And in an interesting sort of theme park twist, the attraction Raging Spirits at Tokyo Disney Sea took visual inspiration for the theme of the Incan ruins from the buildings in the Emperor's New Groove. There's actually a structure based on Cusco's palace, which the gist is, it's nice to see Cuscotopia finally at the end, and it's just like this awesome water park. I wish Disney would have taken one of their water parks like Disney World and given it a Cuscotopia twist.
That would have been a good idea. But now it's just a bird bath.
Well, and to close this out, do you know that the ending was inspired by Sting? Because initially they were going to have it be like, Cusco is just going to build his giant summer getaway on another hill away from Pacha's village, and then they're going to visit each other. But then Sting was like, no, because if Cusco keeps his big lavish retreat, that means he didn't grow as a character. If he settles for just a lodge on a hill next to Pacha,
that's a great moral, just being happy with like what you have and like living within your means, basically.
Yeah,
and don't build
environmentalism
on top of other people's houses. Gentrification,
Just have it be right beside his house.
Thank you, Sting, for changing the ending of the movie for the better.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's enough talking about llamas. I did not pick Jimmy Neutron, though. I could have made another llama joke if I did.
Oh my.
Anyways, next, Lyle.
I'm so proud of you guys.
Okay, so underrated Disney. You guys picked some very good ones, and I wanted to throw in on the animation. Certainly Treasure Planet comes to mind. I even find Meet the Robinsons quite underrated for itself. I could have picked that one.
That still holds up pretty well, I'd say.
I love that one, but I'm riding a very dark horse right now, and I'm climbing to the top of this hill, and on this hill, I think I'm going to die on this hill saying that I think John Carter is actually pretty good. And
You've talked about this film several times over the years, and we finally have a platform for which you can shout it from the mountaintops.
That is correct. I really get a lot out of this movie. I remember I actually saw it in theaters when it came out, and initially I didn't want to, and it was because of the trailer. The trailer is terrible. It paints like it's set on Mars, and then you see aliens and like weird beasts, and then you have this.
Disney and Mars just went so well that year.
Yeah,
that time, it was like Mars needs moms, and then this.
Yeah,
Disney really just hates. And Mission to Mars in 2002. Disney really hates the Red Planet.
Yeah, no, Red Planet. Mars does not get a lot of good representation, honestly.
Well, until it took The Martian with Matt Damon to change that. But
well, yeah, I mean, like a realistic depiction of Mars for sure. That's a good one. But yeah, and I saw the trailer and I saw this gladiator guy just sitting on there on the planet. So what the hell is this? And then you get the tonal whiplash of all this fantastical stuff, and then the title, John Carter, not John Carter of Mars, or even a Princess of Mars, which is what the book is based on, written by Edgar Rice.
I just saw this now. I'm surprised that on the previous episode I talked about a character from another Edgar Rice Burroughs series in Tarzan, so I did not know that he also wrote this series.
Not a lot of people do. And while Tarzan was very successful, largely because, it's a huge IP, people know it, John Carter, Princess of Mars...
Big, shirtless man.
Yeah, but riding around with swords and slashing around, fighting all these animals and aliens, He has a type. He's an adventure guy, but,
So would you call John Carter a rocket man?
No, because he doesn't get there by rocket. He uses a tesseract from some omnipotent beings called Therns that transport a copy of himself onto the planet so he can survive on the planet. It's hard to explain.
That's far more intricate than I thought.
It's not quite. Well, in the book, I actually read the original novel, and actually what happens is he dreams of himself, and it transports a version of himself onto the planet.
Yeah, well, I feel like they had
actually pretty cool for a premise.
The movie had to be succinct because it's like if they did it. By the way,
yeah.
Can I just be honest? Remember how we were talking about Avatar? at the time.
Yeah, this did come out around the time of Avatar.
Okay.
You could argue, a cynical person could say it was trying to ape off of Avatar, when in actuality, the reverse is true.
Avatar, the movie, opened the floodgates for science fiction and what filmmakers could get away with.
I'd say it made that genre viable again after a while.
Yeah, and 3D and all that. But that's the problem, and I kind of understand why a lot of people call this film derivative. Actually, I haven't really even gone into the story that much. Should I give a brief synopsis?
Probably a good idea.
Probably a brief synopsis. Okay, so John Carter is a Confederate soldier from the Civil War. Relax, he's not actually in the cause.
I was going to say, that premise would totally work well today.
Not today, but the thing of it is that he doesn't believe in the cause. He never did. He hates the cause. He's just simply a rebel who is conscripted, and he wants to go on his own. He doesn't want to fight for anything. He just wants to get his cave of gold that he's searching for.
He's not pro-union, he's not pro-Confederacy.
No. And they were very wise to make that distinction early on when he meets up with this General Custer-looking guy, played by Bryan Cranston. When I first saw this movie, I didn't know that.
You're
Bryan
goddamn
Cranston,
right, y'all.
You're goddamn Carter. Now come fight for my war. It's like, no. And they do this like Pirates of the Caribbean thing where he headbutts the guy, tries to get away, gets captured. Jumps out the window, gets captured. Throw him in a cell. And it's like,
I know, we'll call it the guy that just wouldn't stay free.
The guy who just doesn't want to be pro-slavery. There you go.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting.
Sorry, that came out wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I shot this movie in the foot already. But in any case, it has a lot of layers leading up to the first act, and it's a little convoluted. But I trust in Andrew Stanton, because Andrew Stanton, who worked for Pixar for a time, he probably best known for like
Finding Nemo
and Wall-E. Yeah.
And those are both great. So I'm like, I would think with him at the helm, this should be pretty watchable at the least.
He's very, very specific when it comes to story. I read that book that Evan gave me, Creativity Inc. And the one thing that a lot of the people who worked at Pixar praised Stan was that he was a very concise storyteller. He knows how to set up the blocks and all the beats. And I know a lot of people complain that John Carter is long, but I'll get into that later. But in any case, he stumbles into the cave that he's been searching for, the Cave of Gold, and it turns out to be a way station for this alien race known as Therns, who are basically overseeing the entire universe. And he accidentally shoots one of them, grabs the Tesseract that they were holding, and it transports his body to Mars. And at first he has no idea what's going on. He every time he walks, he leaps like 50 feet in the air. He ends up like in the crosshairs of a whole bunch of other alien factions. There's three of them. There's the Tharks.
Wait a second. You could call it cowboys and aliens.
Oh God!
Don't
remind me of that.
No, we're not going back there. We're not going back.
We're not going back. That's another flop. Let's not talk about that one. But yes, he falls in line with the Tharks, who are like these mantis-like beings who live on the planet, and they're sort of like the outliers of the inner conflict, which is between the Zedangans and the Heliums, who are these rival cities who are of the same race, but they're fighting. It's almost like a civil war of a different planet, actually, and it's interesting that they set the Earth. I actually just picked this up while rewatching. They set all the Earth scenes in Arizona with all these massive canyons and all this red sand to kind of make a parallel between the Martian geography. And so Carter ends up in this civil war on Mars, and he just wants to get back to Earth. He wants his gold. He doesn't want to fight for more causes. It's all bullshit. Until he encounters Dejah Thoris, played really... I forgot to mention the cast. So John Carter's played by Taylor Kitsch, and Lynn Collins, who I think honestly steals the whole show, is this princess who has to be used as like a bargaining chip between the Zedangans and the Heliums because they're at war. And the leader of the Zendangans is this complete meathead asshole who's led by the Therns to be like the next ruler of power to take over Mars. I get that this is really nerdy and complex, but what ends up happening is that I feel like John Carter ends up being this film that almost seems so refreshing nowadays because it's just based on a really old piece of source material. On the 100th anniversary of the release of the book, actually, that was pretty cool. 2012. Wow. That was cool. I wonder if they took 50 years to plan that.
Well, on that note, Lyle, the project did go through its share of development hell, but you'll get into that.
Oh, no doubt.
Well, yeah, they've been trying to adapt this these books for a very long time.
All right, let's go back to it.
What I like about this movie, and I know a lot of people have its complaints. They say it's very long, even though it's only 2 hours and 15 minutes. People, I mean, come on, Endgame, you all flock to that. So don't give me that. And a lot of people say that it's very.
Sorry.
Yes.
Say that again. You're telling me that people were complaining about John Carter being long when it's 2 hours and 15 minutes?
This was before superhero movies made long movies cool again.
Oh my guys! When I think of a long movie that people complain about, I think 2 hours and 45 minutes or longer. That's pathetic that you're complaining.
I get
about
it because there's a lot to set up, and it's a lot of explanation. John Carter has to be basically explained how the world works. There's a lot of different factions involved, and a lot of jumping here, there, and everywhere, both literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
But I understand.
It's a new IP that people are getting introduced to, right?
And and that's the thing. A lot of people also complain that this film is derivative, and that's such a pain in the ass because the book came out in 1912 and it inspired so many things. I'm talking like Star Wars. I'm talking like Avatar. Like all these major science fiction conventions that we see today were introduced or at least expanded upon in the series of the Barsoom saga, which was Princess of Mars. And that's the unfortunate thing. The marketing of this film was really not in its favor. I think John Carter is a really bad title. I think John Carter of Mars, or even a Princess of Mars, have Deja Thoris be the main focus, because she is very... I gotta say, I said it once, I'll say it again, Lynn Collins is very magnetic in this role. I like her chemistry with Taylor Kitsch, and I even think Taylor Kitsch does a pretty okay job in this. Considering all the things he has to put up with. And what I love about I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Willem Dafoe as Tarkus, Jeddak of the Tharks, as a four-armed alien praying mantis who I mean, that's just perfect.
Not the weirdest thing I've seen Willem Dafoe in.
Not the weirdest thing.
Those characters had the coolest designs in the whole movie.
I really like the Tharks. They're very interesting. And you also have the rival Thark, played by Thomas Hayden Church, a.k.a. Sandman. So it's like before there was No
Way Home a John Carter reunion?
Basically, 10 years before the fact. So if you ever want to see Sandman and Green Goblin duke it out...
Wow, that's kind of blowing my mind right now.
There's the Spider-Man trilogy and John Carter, No Way Home. There's a gap in between. You guys just missed out on it, but your kids will love it. And in any case, it's too bad. I understand that this movie bombed. It's very niche. The IP is very old, but at its heart, this movie captures my imagination in a way that I don't often see. Like there's like Firefly and Cowboy Bebop, and then when I saw this, I was really enamored by it all. Because it captures that feeling of when you're a kid and you're like, I'm going to leap bounds. And it captures like the old school Superman vibe of a main character who can jump into battle and slay hundreds of enemies at once. And it's really fun and kind of silly, a little campy, but in a way that nowadays we see all the time in Marvel movies. So because this did come out at the exact same time as the Avengers too, actually.
I got a question for you, Lyle.
Yes.
So let's say if Disney were to let's alternate universe this thing where
I have alternate universe
2012 doesn't happen, and so let's say if they were to make a Princess of Mars movie now with her as the focus, if it was coming out now, do you think it would be more well received? / if this was a Disney Plus series?
If after the effects of John Carter, or are we pretending John Carter didn't exist?
We're pretending it never came out in 2012, and they are instead just doing it at right now.
So if they just didn't do a movie, they did a series on Disney Plus.
Either or, like if they made the first movie, but as Lyle said, focused on the princess as the protagonist, or split it up into just being like a Disney Plus series type of thing. Just to test the waters.
I don't know, because I still think the fact that the IP is old, and the fact that Star Wars now Disney owns Star Wars and they're pumping all this shit out, and along with Disney Plus series about Star Wars, I still am afraid that it would fall by the wayside, much like how the film did. This was a tremendous blow to Disney. Like, I think it is actually still one of the biggest bombs of all time.
The CEO of Disney
it killed the chances for
the
other two movies in a planned trilogy.
The CEO of Disney at the time resigned after this movie bombed.
But at least they didn't fire him on a Sunday and replace him with Bob Iger again.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of which, after the bad results. I'm just going to talk about how the cast and crew kind of dealt with it. Andrew Stanton, I read this. He actually spent weeks just going on in the New York subway, just kind of like meditating, just working on scripts. Like he actually kind of felt a little depressed, like kind of like an empty nest situation where he actually had such good hopes for this, and it completely disintegrated in front of him. And because of that, he didn't really know how to fill the gaps. He went back to Pixar. He did like Finding Dory, which is kind of just sort of like a safe bet kind of thing, like sequel to his previous work. So yeah, he didn't really cover. I actually don't know what he's doing now. He hasn't done anything since Finding Dory. And then you have Taylor Kitsch, who doesn't.
Yeah, this kind of killed his star power.
It killed his, but he went back to television. He did that Waco miniseries, which I hear he was pretty good in.
Sorry, Battleship. Completely forgot.
That came out the same year, yeah. So or at least
2012
afterwards.
was like a double dose of bad luck.
Yeah, and that following X-Men Origins Wolverine, which also had Len Collins in it. And on her...
Marvel, when are you going to actually do that Gambit thing you were talking about?
Nah, never. Sadly.
Not
Speaking
anymore.
of going back to Lynn Collins, who was also in X-Men Origins, her agent actually told her, like, you can't do any more movies for a while right now. You're in too much, like, this is your debut as a leading lady, and it bombed, so you're just gonna have to sit back. She's like, well, fucking Taylor Kitsch is able to headline the next Battleship. Why do I have to be, like, resigned to my fate as, like, someone who was in just one flop? Like, why? And, she took, like, a year off, and actually ended up firing her agent as well as her entire line of representation because she was so furious. And yeah, she hasn't really done much afterwards, and that's really a crying shame because she is one of I will say she is like my favorite part of the entire movie. Like that opening shot of her just staring right in the camera, rehearsing her demonstration of the ninth ray and all this. She's really eager, and she's like kind of self-conscious about it too because it's a step in a totally different direction. And that's another thing. This movie was incredibly risky for its time, and I'm so glad that Andrew Stanton did not slack. I can tell he put a lot of his best foot forward. He hired some really good people involved with this. And unfortunately, it just didn't really yield any results, and I do blame marketing. But on a positive note, I have looked at forums for fans of Edgar Rice Burroughs' work, and they are all very positive about this movie. They actually found it to be a very good adaptation, even improving certain aspects of the source material. Rightfully so. I mean, 100 years, you got to kind of evolve storylines, and it's like, I wish people would actually just give it a chance, because I think its reputation is not nearly as bad as, the film itself. The film is not as bad as its reputation. I got that backwards. And, I personally clinged on to this really much. I've seen it like 6 times. I just watched it today, and I gotta say, I am a huge fan of this film. And honestly, I'm not terribly upset that it didn't get a sequel or that it didn't become a trilogy, because on its own it stands pretty strong in my opinion. Like, I know some people have issues with it, and they're not invalid. I understand this film's not for everybody, but if
I
you
feel
like
Disney
things...
didn't give it enough of a fair shake, though. I mean, let's be real, they made a Prince of Persia adaptation a few years earlier. They could have
I saw that too, and I didn't like it.
Prince of Persia, to be fair, is based off a video game, and that
but
was
I'm saying, like, this is before the Assassin's Creed movie proved that, Ubisoft can also put in a bit more effort with their video game movies.
I thought Assassin's Creed was part of the curse that says video game adaptations have to suck when translated to the screen. And it's not. It took until like the last 3 years with like Sonic, and now especially with the Last of Us TV show on HBO that everyone's saying
good reviews.
The
I
curse is
seen
broken.
it yet, but
yeah.
Well, but you know what they say, all roads lead to Abbey, but that's again another time.
So if I may say something about this movie, so I'm glad.
Go ahead. I feel like I'm yammering.
No, you clearly have.
Well, I mean, to your credit, you've seen it quite a bit, and again, that's myself being a newcomer. I don't have too much to add myself.
Well, I've seen it once, and here's the thing. I was in film school while this movie was in theaters and bombing, and I remember overhearing like 2 older students, a couple terms above me, talking about what they saw when they went to see John Carter. Now, here's the thing. Being in film school and following the current market of movies forever changed the way I will look at movies, because in the first 20 years of my life, I would hear about movies from my parents or from the kids at school who saw them. And up till that point, if a movie was my friends just said whatever the critics said. Like if it was good, then my friends would go see it and my friends would love it. Although we were kids, so that was like the perspectives were a little shifty now that I look back. But if something was praised by critics as good, everyone thought it was good. But when you get to film school, that's when like your critical eye as a filmmaker strengthens a little bit. Now, while everyone was dunking on John Carter, I remember these two older film students, a couple terms above me, were saying, "Yeah, we saw it on the weekend. It's not terrible." They said it reminds me of the Phantom Menace. I'm like, I like the Phantom Menace.
They actually had a point. That was also an overhated film for its time. It's
the Phantom Menace
back around, and 25 years later, it's actually pretty solid.
I mean, I'd say I would say John Carter is a little better than the prequels in my personal opinion, but I can have, I see that comparison because I do think Phantom Menace is kind of fun in a goofy kind of way.
If Phantom Menace was like a standalone science fiction film, it probably would have gotten better praise, but the standards for making a prequel to Star Wars, George Lucas didn't realize how high they were, but no Star Wars tangent. But back to John Carter. I like what I see. It piques I've only seen it once, but I kind of want to watch it again because it's like
I would recommend it. Yeah,
it piques my curiosity.
I would be willing to give it a shot.
And by the way, I remember Lyle and I. It was sometime within the past few years. We were in a bar on the Danforth, and we were like sitting at the bar. And what else is playing on the big screen at the bar than this movie on like the movie channel? And then it was like ABC Night at the Movies.
It's a sign.
And then Lyle was like, "Yes, like thank you for playing John Carter. Like thanks for the." I'm glad this movie's getting
Did I tell
some
the
love."
staff that?
Yeah.
Oh man, I am such a.
I bet you tipped generously
nerd.
that night.
Not even. Like it was beautiful.
I am such a fucking nerd. But yeah, I would totally
we're
tip
all
the
nerds
staff.
in our own ways.
That's true, but speaking of which, I remember I saw this movie in high school, and I gotta give props to Film Master Adam, who's a YouTuber. I forgot to mention this in the beginning, but like he was a YouTuber who made an actual plea for this movie. Like, you gotta see this. It's really cool. Nobody's seen it right now, but here's the rundown of everything you need to know before you see it. So it's a little bit of a homework thing to catch up. I'd recommend that video because it actually painted the movie in a good light, and maybe that was part of the reason why I liked it so much. But yeah, I thank Film Master Adam for that. And after I saw the movie, I told my drama teacher, who's a huge science fiction aficionado, I told him I saw John Carter and I really liked it. And he gave me this really wry smile. It's like, "Lyle, I am so happy to hear that. And I'm going to explain to you every single reason why we are a very small crowd when it comes to liking this movie. Because when you watch Star Wars, they call a gun and all that, But John Carter, they use a lot of the old text from the books. So they speak in the language. They call Mars Barsoon. There's like Asia Thoris, Thark, Thurn, Zundangan, Jedak. Like, there's just a lot of terminology. And that scares people because it's very foreign and very unusual.
Well,
and I'll wrap it up. I think John Carter is very well done for what it is. I don't think it's nearly as bad as the reputation beholds. I think more people should. I think it's due for a reevaluation, and I think it's starting to get some. I do know that Lynn Collins and Taylor Kitsch, not Tyler Kitsch. Anytime after they've walked around, some people have actually come up to them and said, "You were very good in this. I don't know why it bombed. Please don't be hard on yourself. It's very good." And they're both very proud of their work. So is Andrew Stanton. So
it's a nice sort of redemption arc.
On the note of, terminology scares the viewer. Like, how do you think this movie compares to something like Dune? Because Dune is very
I was
similar.
waiting for one of you to say that. And it's fair. It's a
he has
comparison.
seen it.
I've seen Dune, and I know Cody, he raves up and down about Dune. I think Dune, based on Dune is a different animal than Princess of Mars, because Princess of Mars is kind of science fantasy. It's sword and planet, sandal planet fiction. It's not super deep, but it's interesting, and it's still fun. It's fun. But Dune is like complex. It's very political. It's very applicable to modern life.
Dune is about, family legacy, war, and resources and greed.
Which is why I'm glad John Carter actually made a point to compare itself to the Civil War with like warring clans fighting one another.
Yeah.
It's you can't predict these things. I don't know why Dune is successful where John Carter isn't. I think Dune is very well made. I think it's very mature, and I think it was going for something really realistic and cinematic. And John Carter was kind of aimed more to be more an adventure. It was going to be a franchise. It was going to be very swashbuckling. And yeah, I can see why most people didn't gravitate towards it. No pun intended.
Yeah, no, honestly, but it kind of, speaking of alternate realities, I think about this, like, so Disney was able to recoup Disney as a mammoth parent company was able to recoup their John Carter losses because 2 months later, the Avengers cleaned house and
and everybody forgot about it not long after.
Which is sad.
Yeah.
Like
I enjoy both equally, to be honest with you.
That's great.
I mean, I would honestly say though, I would feel that John Carter really does get the last laugh because now, 11 years later, everybody is super fatigued on the superhero genre.
You're right.
A genre needs to come back.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of supplanted by like sci-fi weirdness with like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. That kind of fills the hole that John Carter gave me. But you're right. It's an unfortunate loss, and it's definitely one that I hope more people end up liking as time goes forward. People are kind of predicting that it could possibly be a cult classic, or it could get a reevaluation, and I'm really hoping for the day because I do know people who like this movie or people who love this movie. Not as much as me, but like definitely people who have given it a chance and kind of see it a bit more. They see it on a kinder lens than audiences initially had when it first came out. Sorry, can I just make one more note? I totally forgot to mention this. Michael Giacchino's score in John Carter is one of my favorite scores of his. Like, it still gets stuck in my head to this day. Like,
I guess I gotta give it a listen sometime then.
I feel like, you know what? Ever since like Cody introduced me to Lost, and I realized like how far back Michael Giacchino's like work goes, I'm really he's kind of like Michael Giacchino is kind of like the John Williams of the 21st century. Like, he's so diverse.
That's fair. Yeah, he's very good.
I'm not super up on all of my composers, but it's not 100% wrong.
I think I've said it. I think I've said enough. I've talked my mouth off enough. I'm glad you guys gave me the platform for me to discuss my feelings about it. And I will continue to enjoy John Carter for as long as I live. And
very well said.
With that, let's leave the house of mouse, please. Because
bye, Disney.
There's gotta be other movies from other companies that we can talk about.
I think our final round will definitely be us sort of stepping outside of the comfort zone in some ways.
So for the last round of the night, I'm gonna take us back to 2012 with this movie that not many people.
I thought it was 2011.
2011. Sorry, goddamn it.
Yeah, 2011.
2011. So, in the Christmas of 2011,
magical year.
I see this trailer, and honestly, I didn't expect it to be what it was. I saw the trailer, Tom Hanks and this new up and coming child actor named Thomas Horn. Him and Tom Hanks are leading a movie called Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. And basically the plot is this. Oscar Schell is a boy who is very neurotic, very socially awkward, and very, very curious, but is terrified to talk to people. His dad, who is his connection to the world as we know it, is tragically lost on 9/11 when the trade centers are hit. And the year after his father's death is basically Oscar picking up the pieces, and one day he's going through his father's effects, and he discovers a blue vase, and the vase breaks, but in the vase is an envelope that contains a key, and the key is in an envelope with one word written on it: black. And
he's off to the races.
This kid takes it upon himself to walk alone through every borough of New York City, knocking on every door, going through the phone book, knocking on doors, talking to people named Black. And at first, like, it's a very practical, grounded in reality tale, but, like, the adventure is intriguing, and it actually has its scary moments. Like, you're a kid who's, like, borderline autistic. Yes, in the movie, it's established that he is tested for Asperger's syndrome, but in his own words, tests weren't definitive. But this kid has all the characteristics of someone with Asperger's. Like,
I think this is the first movie I've ever seen that, from in my own experience, that actually touches on Asperger's as it does.
Well, I'm glad you pointed that out, Lyle, because Josh, have you seen this movie?
I've heard of this movie, but it's one I have wanted to see just because, at least for me, the premise of this boy exploring New York City. I mean, obviously the setting of it makes sense for him to want to get closure that way. But I think just the cinematography really does give a lot of depth to his quest.
Imagine you open up a copy of this movie's editing timeline in Final Cut Pro. You have footage like
like you do.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have footage. You have like the footage spliced all over the place. This movie is edited to simulate a way a person with Asperger's syndrome thinks and feels. Like, if they've got sensory overload, this movie will cut to a close-up. If the character is scared of heights, a shot will be thrown in instantly to emphasize that. If the kid is scared of planes,
that is pretty on point.
A giant plane will fly overhead. Like, just impeccable editing. And what makes this by the way, I know I'm calling this an underrated movie. I was expecting this to be like all over the Oscars in 2012, but it was overshadowed by stuff like The Artist and other things like that. But
oh wow, that was that long ago.
The one praise that this movie got that it deserved was this: Max von Sydow, who very sadly passed away in 2020. He plays the best character in the whole movie. Like,
he's personally my favorite part of the movie too. Yes, like, he's my greatest takeaway from it.
This is a man who, I didn't know this was even physically possible, but believe it or not, when it comes to trauma wreaking havoc on the human mind, there are people that are so traumatized that choose not to speak. And Max von Sydow's character is that person.
Yeah,
this man
is someone that has some personal experience with that concept. Now, the more I think about it, the renter actually does make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
was it trauma or was it a vow of silence? I forget.
It's trauma. He chooses not to speak because of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole idea is this: the renter, that's his character's name, is shrouded in mystery. But I don't want to spoil anything I know we're big on spoilers, but because Josh hasn't seen it, I actually don't want to spoil anything. But like, there is a big mystery around who the renter is and what he means to Oscar. So the dramatic question in this movie is, will Oscar find out who this key belongs to, and will he get the closure he's looking for after the death of his dad, or will he just keep looking forever? And if that's what it comes to, is he willing to look forever? Now, the acting is phenomenal. Tom Hanks is Tom Hanks doesn't even feel like he's playing Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks plays like a guy who he knows that his son is different. I hate using the word different, but he knows that his son thinks differently. He is the most accommodating father for someone like this, with this mindset, that I've ever seen on film. But sadly, his father dies, and he's stuck with his mother, played by Sandra Bullock. Sandra Bullock tries painstakingly to understand her son, and it's very difficult to watch her do it. Like, the most stressful scene in this whole movie involves a scene where, like, Oscar is, like, having a meltdown, and like, she's trying to talk some sense into him, and it gets to the very painful conversation where, like, I now, as someone who has not lost a parent, I can't imagine what it will be like to process your other parent who is still around talking to you and explaining, like, in very blunt terms, like, your mom is, or your dad is gone and he's not coming back. Like, and then the kid is just devastated by that. And like, that's the most stressful scene in the movie. And the scene literally ends with him, telling her like, I wish it was you in the trade center and not him. And it's like, wow.
That's harsh.
So, but like, that just goes to show like the kind of how much the pain of loss.
Well, especially because he's, I believe, only what, 8 or 9.
He's about 10, 10 or 11.
Okay, 9, 10. Like, still grade school age. And, like, you not only have to process an event like that, but, you have to wrap your head around all these things that are still fairly new. And it's something as cataclysmic as 9/11, not to mention, he has no idea that there are so many other people that may be going through their own challenges the same way he is.
And that's the beauty of it. Like, every single person he meets on his quest is dealing with something. And he gets into their world for even a few minutes, and they get into his. It's like, if you're like, and by the way, like, it does, even if like you're watching this and you don't know an autistic person, it's like, it's a great, if you're hesitant to get, if you're introverted and you're hesitant to get to know people, like, this is a great way to, show like what's possible when this kid steps outside his comfort zone in the most literal way and most metaphorical way possible.
In a way you could only do in a pre-pandemic world.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, and I feel like the pandemic is going to change like the way the way stories are told in movies, like, because it was a globe altering, society altering series of events, the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, I know there will be movies made about the pandemic, much like how this would be about.
What?
True.
I want to watch Contagion by Steven Soderbergh because when COVID was becoming a problem in China, I went to watch the trailer on YouTube for Contagion, and the comments section was just updated with recent comments saying this is basically coronavirus the movie.
Yeah, everyone said that.
On a more positive note, I hope that in the future, there are new, like, people do make movies like this. Obviously, just, it reflects, the post-pandemic times, but, it's a great message about, you have to get through the challenging times in life by getting out and really trying to explore the world around you and try and make an impact, even on just one person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of the talent, so I talked about Thomas Horn, who sadly has not done much since this movie.
No, this was pretty much his main thing.
I thought like he was gonna actually become a huge childhood name in the 2010s. He didn't, and I don't know what he's doing today. But everyone else in this movie, I mean, Max von Sydow had a successful career up to his death.
Viola Davis.
Viola Davis was very new to the acting scene, and then Jeffrey Wright has a role at the end.
Wright.
Yeah, we got Pacha again.
John Goodman, John Goodman's character, he's the doorman at Oscar's apartment complex, and he's the most nonchalant.
Even Stephen McKinley Henderson, who you probably know from like Lady Bird or Manchester by the Sea. He was in this too.
Him. Yeah. He's the locksmith. He's great. He's only in it for one scene, but yeah.
Yeah, he started out bit parts, but he got more recognition.
He was in Dune too, eh?
He's in Dune, yeah.
Yeah.
How about that?
Coming back to that.
Man, everything's just connected. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Oh, here's a fun fact. So Thomas Horn actually won over $30,000 on the 2010 Jeopardy Kids Week.
That's right. Yes.
Oh,
so it's kind of like,
and he had no prior acting experience, but they picked him for the role solely because of his charisma through Jeopardy, I guess.
So it's kind of like
kids watching and playing Jeopardy can get you a Hollywood career.
So it's kind of like how what happened
to.
Do you remember what happened to Aaron Paul with The Price Is Right? Yeah.
Well, I guess I do now.
Yeah.
I guess it was right.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So I don't really. There's not much more I can say. I think I've summed up everything I want to say about this movie. Extremely loud and incredibly close. By the way, it is based off of a book, and I did read the book last year. The book, in its own right, is very intricate and convoluted. The movie doesn't cover nearly everything the book does. The book goes way deeper into like the characters and their backgrounds. But the book and in the movie are two different entities, and ultimately like the movie is really well done. I don't think it did very well in terms of its box office returns, and despite Max von Sydow getting a nomination for Best Supporting Actor, like, it didn't win anything beyond that, and it kind of faded into obscurity. Oh, also, if either of you are looking at the IMDb trivia page for this movie, the film's director wanted this movie to be complete, and so it could be released in time. That he wanted to release
the 10th anniversary.
He wanted to release it on September 11th, 2011, the 10th anniversary of the disaster. He missed that goal by a couple of months, and the movie.
I'm also kind of sure that studio executives would not want that to happen.
I think it's better he didn't do that, to be honest.
Better to aim for a Christmas
also,
release.
the movie wasn't complete in time.
Yeah,
so why don't you think
the optics on that?
So you guys don't think it would have been a good idea for him to release that movie?
I think because it was still, the optics on that, it's still, even if it was 10 years at that point, it's still fresh in Americans' eyes.
Yeah, a 10-year time gap is still
not super great
soon.
Optics to do that.
Yeah. Still pretty soon in their eyes. Yeah. So Evan, do you find this to be a pretty respectable representation of a child with Asperger's? Is that why?
I mean, it's a great. I think so, because here's the thing, when autism is or Asperger's is represented in the movies, I remember, because Josh, you and I both know the activist and writer Sarah Kerchak, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of interviewing her for another project last year, and I've read her book, How I Overcame My.
Yeah, I think it was I Overcame Anxiety, and all I got was this lousy. It wasn't lousy T-shirt. It's lousy something, but that's a good book.
Yeah, no, I read it. It's great, and so she ends the book by saying,
I overcame my autism, and all I got was this lousy anxiety disorder. And I believe she has another book either out now or coming out soon.
Great, I'll read it. But yeah, so when Sarah Kerchak, she ends her book by basically ripping Rain Man a new asshole for how horrible it represents autistic people, and I guess a lot of people there, and I guess that movie. With the current.
Boy, I can't wait to see her go after Atypical soon.
Honestly, I don't even. As someone on the spectrum, I think the first season of Atypical was a little but the second season makes it a little better. I need to watch.
I think that was half jokingly, but I'm just kind of like, you can finish. I have my own points about that, but you can continue yours.
But so, in terms of autism representation, I think Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close handles it appropriately and is mainly accurate. I just wish that, and I like how they don't make the kid a savant. They just make him socially anxious, and that side of autism.
That's the more relatable side.
Exactly, Josh. Exactly.
It's not that it's like, knows everything, but is portrayed as inept. It's just you take a little bit longer to figure stuff out.
Exactly. So yeah, no, when autistic people are portrayed in on film or in television, they usually make them either a savant or a total clueless person who takes everything literally. The problem I have with the kid from Atypical is that it feels like the writing staff of that show at Netflix just looked up the cliff notes of autism and they just said,
my problems with Atypical sort of go beyond just the focus, the writing of Sam, but
fair enough.
Another time.
It feels like the writers of Atypical just looked up cliff notes of autism and are just autistic people take things literally. Okay, we'll have Sam take everything literally, literally everything. He cannot understand metaphors. So, but hey, there are autistic people that have a very hard time taking jokes and understanding metaphors. That's fine. There was that story about that autistic kid who, was screaming praise at Drax the Destroyer in Guardians of the Galaxy because when Drax said, "Nothing goes over my head, my reflexes are too fast, I would catch it." That kid was like, "Yeah, that's me. I can't understand metaphors either." So,
right.
so yeah, I get, but the side of being so socially in tune with yourself that you can't let go of something, that is a side of autism and Asperger's that is not explored enough on film, and Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close explores that in a brilliant way. So kudos to the movie for that.
All right.
That's all I have to say. Thank you for the question, Lyle. But yeah,
I'm glad you feel that way.
Yeah.
So, Evan, I wanted to circle back to one of your earlier points, ironically, about John Carter, when you heard the older students talking about how it was actually not that bad, and that sort of shaping how you sort of analyzed film and sort of watched stuff going forward. Because I think when I went to college for radio about a decade ago, that sort of shaped how I sort of heard about music as well, not only through the internet, but through, other classmates and people sort of like, getting into different scenes and tastes as well. And it is kind of fitting that I guess I brought that up because my final pick this evening is me sort of going a little bit out of, as I mentioned, my own comfort zone. And I'm going to be talking about a documentary.
Cool.
But not just any documentary, because as I've mentioned to you and Lyle before the show, that both of you have known me for quite some time. And if you know me, you know I've talked about the idea of mashups quite a bit on this particular podcast. And I felt the time was right to finally get into a documentary that not only talks about the concept of mashups, but about changing the way we look at copyright itself. I'm talking about one of my favorite documentaries from Brett Gaylor, 2008's RIP or Remix Manifesto.
Interesting.
One of your biggest.
So not only is this a documentary, it's an open source one as well. So Brett Gaylor put this on his website and was asking people to contribute to this. So the idea is this is literally really collaborative effort. So this was put together over a period of 6 years, and there's a whole, but like hundreds of people have actually helped contribute to the Open Source Cinema website to basically put this thing together. So there's a few different sort of premises, but it's all centered around the 4 tenets of what is sort of the Remixer's Manifesto, which is the first tenet that culture always builds on the past. And it's sort of introduced through the idea of Greg Gillis, who most of the internet will better know as Girl Talk, which is freaking amazing that he is involved with this because his mashups are pretty great. I mean, Marnie and I were actually rewatching this earlier this evening, and I was telling her that you can draw a clear line through the world of mashups from like John Oswald and his work with Plunderphonics in the 80s through to, the early internet memes and through YouTube poops and artists like Girl Talk or Super Mash Brothers on YouTube as well, other sorts of things. And then it keeps going through to probably some of my favorite mashup artists today, Neil Cicerega with his like mouth sounds, mouth silence, mouth moods, mouth dreams. And then to probably my favorite modern sort of mashup production team, the Hood Internet, who have basically taken mashups to the next art form, which is basically just taking the songs and making them like, putting them together like how they were always meant to be sound. It's like you're Mandela affecting yourself. Like you feel like that's how these songs should have sounded. But the gist is that it's sort of questioning the idea of what the copyright system is meant to protect. And it sort of divides into 2 sides: the copyright, which are more like the bigger corporations that are protecting the profit side, and the copy left, which is about the public domain and free exchange of ideas, which though it focuses a lot, especially on Disney and their, once Walt Disney passed away in 1965, the corporate side really sort of took over. And it argues that Walt Disney was really sort of the first real remixer of culture with a lot of the animated versions of all the fairy tales and sort of mythical things.
I'd agree with that.
And then once I was amazed, like, yeah, that works. That makes perfect sense. And I wish Disney would go back to that side, because once he passed away, they really took a hold of the copyright, especially of Mickey Mouse the character, so that nobody else can do that again. And that leads to the second tenet of the manifesto: the past always tries to control the future. Isn't that pertinent, especially in 2023?
Yeah.
Are you talking
YouTube
like
Content ID, things like that?
In our consumption of media, we are obsessed with nostalgia, and we just want to go
definitely.
back.
But like the fact that, the stuff that went on in the past, it's always trying to get a tighter and tighter grip on what future generations can do. And as a result, the third tenet, our future is becoming less free. So some of the other participants involved, you have academic and political activist Lawrence Lessig, who also has founded the Center for Internet and Society. So there's a part where he's going, I think, on various trips to. They go on a trip to China, where he talks at a conference basically about the role of the copyright and what actually is considered free speech and all that stuff. And you also hear from Cory Doctorow, who's a blogger a journalist and author. And you also hear from a really cool underground cartoonist, Dan O'Neill, who not only can play a good banjo, he founded the Air Pirates, which was this sort of satirical comic book artist collective that basically drew Mickey Mouse in the style of, like, I think the Steamboat Willie era, the old school kind, but it's more like satirizing him. And it's sort of like the way the New Yorker would, but it's more, a little bit more in the 60s, 70s style of counterculture, and they got sued by the Walt Disney Company for copyright infringement. And it also does, but it also goes into, of course, with, it does mention Napster, which, of course, God, that's almost 25 years ago, but Napster, especially when it comes to the peer-to-peer, the 1.0 peer-to-peer version of it, that was a shot across the bow where you can trace that line from peer-to-peer file sharing all the way to the Apple Musics and Spotify's and titles of today, and to sort of see that, literally teenagers / college students figured it out in the mid-late 90s, and then the RIAA basically took that all the way, like the music industry took that all the way to the bank, and Napster walked so Apple could run, in a matter of speaking, and it goes
That's
into,
a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
True.
So, like, there's a segment where, like, some church pastor in Texas is talking about how he was sued by the RIAA because one of his children was downloading music off Napster, and there's also a single mom that is mentioned in here that she was sued for, like, over $200,000 for putting 24 songs up on Kazaa. Just things like that, sometimes people have to suffer the slings and arrows of, their peers at the time to end up being on the right side of history later on. But I really like the questioning of, what's really important as a creative, as, I feel that's something I can personally relate to. When you're trying to make stuff, do you want to be sufficient enough at it to be able to live off that? But then if so, the other part plays in of, are you actually comfortable profiting off that work? And, it's always that dichotomy of, like, art versus commerce, and is it a gray area? Is one side really more correct than the other?
Now you got me curious as to, like, what the context of this conversation is, because honestly, if I could quit my job tomorrow and just live off this
it's
podcast,
easy to just
or live off
filmmaking,
I'd do that
like
instantly.
that.
But yeah.
So the neat thing about this is, the beginning is a lot of focusing on Girl Talk and how he makes his mashups and a lot of the neat concert footage, which is just like, that's the neat part. But it goes into a bigger sort of detail about how, the idea of, guess which artist did this song. If you guess the actual artist, you're wrong. It actually belongs to Girl Talk, because Girl Talk is the director's favorite artist, and it's showing the process. He's using Adobe Audition to actually, like, condense the samples into the length that he needs to put the remixes together. It's pretty remarkable, but as a whole, it really serves a greater purpose to show, like, how important it is to have resources like the Wayback Machine, and as a whole, the Internet Archive, which I've spoken a bit at length before about how it serves an important purpose in preserving various forms of media, whether it be software, digital books, people upload videos of old, commercial compilations, other sorts of things that are sort of essential to preserve media with, because for something like Napster, people could they basically created the world's largest music library by having this network be accessible from anyone's computer. And the Internet Archive does the same thing. And it's important to mirror and, share files around and, be able to have that right of free speech, free expression. And in fact, there's that whole correlation of, preservation. I've been talking with I'm in various modding communities for video games and stuff, and there is this thing that I've sort of come to accept, that preservation is piracy to a good degree, because you can't preserve things that are hard to find without pirating to some degree to come across it.
Right.
And the fact that some things, whether it be video games or other sorts of media, may be lost to time if they're not preserved properly. I think, to quote a user by the name of Cult of Mirrors on archive.org, if it's not mirrored, it's not preserved. And I have definitely sort of come across stuff like that, where things are just on someone's hard drive, but they're never going to actually be shared and properly, like, protected for future generations to enjoy. But the neat story about this is, I believe I did see this documentary around the time it came out, so this would have been in high school, and it blew my mind then, because not only did it help get me into mashups, it gave me a lot to think about, obviously philosophically. And then fast forward to when I met Marnie, and then when we were hanging out at her old apartment, she also had a copy. Like, she had a copy of this, so now we can watch it whenever we want. But for accessibility's sake, not only is this under the Creative Commons CC BY NCSA 3.0 license, so that anyone can remix this film whenever they want, the National Film Board also has this up for free to view on YouTube.
Oh, very good.
So that way anybody can watch it, and I believe the version on YouTube may be the 2.0 version, which was released in 2009, where Brett Gailett basically, again, allowed people to contribute stuff to the open source cinema site, and he incorporated various parts of that, the various submissions, into the film with like a little spinning Creative Commons logo, so that way people can know when things have been contributed. And it's just a great, I think it goes beyond the point of it being, about, questioning the copyright system and the idea of having, future generations, being able to get that control back. And I consider it underrated just because even though, the approval rating is not super great, and even though there was a bit of a mixed audience reception, I feel the contents of it have only become more prevalent over time, especially now that, there is interest in a lot more. The preservationist approach has become a lot more accepted in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years, because it was always sort of an underground thing. And that's really the idea with a lot of this stuff, is it's taking a lot of the more counterculture things and trying to push it underground to suppress it, but it's only going to make it pop back up more stronger and stronger than ever over time. And I think it's important that people see documentaries like this to, get that spirit going. And I highly recommend it, not just because it's free, but it also reinforces just how important the National Film Board of Canada is, because they have a lot of great documentaries that are pretty widely accessible. Yeah, I mean that was sort of the thing when I thought about this, because I'm not a super film aficionado, but I think of all the films that have had the most impact on me, sure, there are some that are kids' movies that have like a bit of a deeper moral you have to dig through. This is asking a really important philosophical and moral question that has actually helped, shape my approach to how I do things in more ways than I could have ever imagined. And it's not even just, you get you hooked with the mashup stuff, but then you really sink your teeth in with the copyright law question.
So, remind me again what this movie's called. I'm sorry.
It's called RIP, a Remix Manifesto. It's sort of stylized with a capital R,
found it
lowercase
on
I, capital
Letterboxd.
P.
Oh, 2008.
Yeah, the great thing about it is just that it asks so many questions, and yet, even for a time, I mean, there is a bit of a segment where it's like, if you were to even sing Happy Birthday, you'd have to pay Warner Chappell Publishing royalties for using it. That's the one part that fortunately has aged poorly, because I believe about 10 years ago they finally put Happy Birthday to You in public domain.
Josh, there is a small chance I may have watched this at some point in film school in class. I can't guarantee.
It's entirely possible.
I can't guarantee it's possible. I'd have to watch it, because I do remember.
Great, watch it again.
Okay, I remember learning. Remember how when you were talking about how Happy Birthday is copywritten, I remember learning in film school about like how much money it costs to use Happy Birthday in a movie, because Happy Birthday is not public domain. But apparently, every time you hear Happy Birthday in a movie, know that the production paid a pretty penny for it. It's possible that maybe I learned it from this documentary in one of my classes. I'll have to watch it. And if it clicks with me, I will let you know, okay?
No, that's fine. I mean, there's some aspects of RIP that, have aged really well and actually hold up great, but others that, for better or worse, are dated a little bit. But I think it's great just because it's a point in time where, even the parts where it shows like different sort of YouTube poop type things, it shows the old YouTube interface. And I was telling Marnie that I missed that old YouTube interface. It was just about, giving a video 5 stars, not so much about algorithms and things like that, about really, really strict content ID systems. It was just about sharing videos. And I'm really happy that because this is so accessible on YouTube, because it's through the National Film Board, again, the distribution channel is going to be strong enough that perhaps in another, 15 to 30 years, people will still be able to watch it. And it asks a lot of questions that we still don't have the answers to today. And even as, the dominant form of social media being TikTok. It's all about things being shorter, more consumable, and songs are now between 2.25 to 3 minutes again on average. So we may be circling back around towards where you got to be able to take things and reinterpolate them, make them your own. To sort of paraphrase the late great Gil Scott-Heron, the revolution will not be televised, but it will most certainly be remixed and reworked for generations to come.
Nice.
Very nice. Yeah, I can see this being right up your alley with how much... when we were at your wedding ceremony, you had an entire remix when you two were walking down the aisle, so you clearly have quite an affinity for it.
Yeah.
I guess you could say it sort of left its mark on me that way, and I'm hoping everyone here will give it a watch, because I highly, highly recommend it.
Okay.
Nice.
I'll check it out.
Is this the only documentary you've ever covered in this series?
Yeah, this is the only documentary ever covered in the underrated movies.
Because you talked about one in the coming of age movies episode.
Yeah, that was Life Animated. Also also covers autism.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I guess I shall go into my next pick, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So I talked about an overlooked movie, an overhated movie, and now I tend to do this for all these these underrated movies. I'm going to talk about a very obscure film from 1941. probably the oldest film on this list. I certainly am. And speaking of copies, I think this one may be out of print. It's not easily accessible either way. And I'm really hoping and praying that Criterion makes a release, because my next film is...
It's a what? What is it?
It's Hellzapoppin. Based off of the Broadway musical production from back in the day. Yeah, so...
You're not going to believe this. I think someone has posted it on YouTube.
That's how I saw it.
Well, there you go.
There you go. So that's easy access for all you gentlemen over there.
I was hoping it might be on something like Peacock.
Yeah, I don't know. It is a... Is it Universal? Yeah, it's owned by Universal. So I don't know why it's not distributed, but it should be on Peacock if that's the case. But in any case, it's based on a musical, and the thing with adapting it is, I've done research, because I didn't know much about this at the time, but the way the musical worked was, it was never scripted. Everything, think about this almost like South Park. Every single joke in this musical, because it's almost like a sketch comedy kind of idea. That's the approach they went anyways. And it's a musical that has intermittent gags and sight gags and all sorts of pratfalls and things that are inserted. Each and every performance is different. And it became very successful. I think it was one of the most successful of its time. And when studios wanted to adapt it, the two leads, I have to quickly pick up their names, Ole Olsen and Chick Johnson, they decided to basically make a meta film. So because the initial idea was next to impossible. So picture this. This is a film in 1941 that is about the making of a film, whereas the main characters insert themselves into the project and evaluate it as it's being shown. And there's a projection.
Oh my god, that's an amazing premise on its own.
There are layers to this shit. Oh my god. Like, the projectionist puts the movie in, and as it plays the movie goes into behind its own set, and the producer is like, "Oh, you can't make a movie like this." I'm like, "All right, well, let's make another movie."
I thought The Emperor's New Groove was meta.
This
is meta before meta was even invented.
This premiered before,
I love me some good meta.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And going back to the first underrated movies episode we ever did, where I talked about Death to Smoochie, and I said Death to Smoochie was meta before meta was cool. This may have that beat. I gotta check this out.
This actually predates Duck Amuck, like the Looney Tunes short.
Wow.
And I would not be surprised if it was.
You know what? I'm gonna watch Hellzapoppin. I've been ever since I saw your Letterboxd review. I think in the last month or two, I'm like, okay, I gotta see this. And then the fact it predates Duck Amuck, which is one of my favorite Looney Tunes shorts of all, like, episodes of all time. Gotta watch that afterwards.
Speaking of Looney Tunes, Evan, I actually have to kind of thank you for introducing me to this movie. because you, in the first episode, you brought up Looney Tunes Back in Action. And I watched it, and I was like, it's not bad. Yeah, it's all right. And I wanted to go into Joe Dante's, like, history with the film, so I watched a video. They mentioned this movie as, like, kind of like a footprint in Joe Dante's, like, career, because it was a huge inspiration for him. This YouTuber, the Royal Ocean Film Society, actually introduced me to Hellzapoppin, because they did a review of Looney Tunes Back in Action, and that movie was very much inspired by this one. So, yeah, as I established, this is very meta, and it predates a lot of what we consider like parody or satire, or even like film reference in general, because this must have inspired like Mel Brooks or the Abram brothers.
Well, I could see the
or
producers
Zuckers.
taking a few pages out of this movie's playbook for sure.
Yeah, or even like Blazing Saddles. Like
Blazing Saddles, and yeah.
There's even a section in this film where I shit you not, it's basically like a blueprint of the entirety of Mystery Science Theater. The main characters sit on chairs in front of this screen, and they're like,
"Oh my
god,
that's exactly it."
Oh my god, look at what these characters are, and they even do lip syncing.
Just answer your question.
They tried to kill him with a forklift. Oh,
Hellzapoppin is on YouTube.
Yeah,
Josh
that's what found it too. So yeah,
word travels fast.
But I swear to God, there's even parts where they lip sync to the people on the screen that they're reacting to, and the people immediately
and they
turn.
Do bad lip reading.
And yeah, the bad lip reading, it does that too. And the people turn to them on the screen. It's like, hey, stop that. That's not how my voice sounds. I'm not that annoying. What's wrong with you? Oh my God, every second. You want to talk about laughs per minute? I swear to God, this movie never slows down. And the moments when it does slow down, the movie itself fucks with the movie, because it's like, you're boring. Move on. Because like there's
boring. You're boring, everyone.
Because there has to be like a tenuous thing to kind of pull the plot along, and so the movie in itself is kind of like this tepid love triangle story. And there's like side characters, like there's this king or this prince of this exotic country who's pretending to be a commoner to fit in with this crowd. Because there's like this big show that's going to happen at the end of it that they're trying to sell, I guess. Like I said, the plot's very tenuous, and it's just like a very surface level through line to get to each and every set piece. The editing in this movie is like nothing I've ever seen in 1941. And it's like, there's one segment where the projectionist falls asleep, and the movie breaks, and the film reel cuts like 30% of the screen. So we're seeing the main character's feet and the main character's heads above, and the heads look up.
That's clever.
And the feet, and the guys have to squat down. It's like, hey, get up here. Oh, you come down here.
I've heard of being asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, but oh my God, it's tremendous. And there's even a sequence which would feel right at home in The Invisible Man, where one of the main characters have to disappear because they got in trouble. So it's like, what are you gonna do? It's like, I am a magician. I will make you vanish. It's like, well, you got my bottom, and you get my top. Yeah, you got my top, and you get my bottom. It's like, ooh, people are coming, and they fuse the two of them together, and they have to walk out.
Dance.
They have to walk in unison, and I don't know how they did it.
That's impressive. Wow,
it is
amazing.
Oh wow, yeah, I highly recommend this one to you guys. I don't want to get too much into every single minutia of every single joke, because I feel like that might get a little tedious. And I will say,
with the giant snowstorm barreling down on us tonight, I've got some viewing material for the next couple of days.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, and I will say this movie is a little exhausting, to be honest, because it is so mile a minute, and there's so many sight gags and recurring jokes throughout.
Okay.
And there's not really an emotional center. It's just a heads up, but it's fine, because what they're aiming for is this zany comedy that that breaks all the rules.
I have to pick your brain on this, Lyle, before we wrap up. How would you compare this to Babylon, which is very new and we just saw it? So.
Okay, Babylon. It's
probably not that fair of a comparison, but like period time, Because Babylon, would you consider Babylon to be meta? Because like they were a commentary on the film industry of the 1920s.
It's not meta. It's just a biopic about the making of sound movies or silent films back in that era and the transition from silent to sound, which was in the early 30s, like late 20s.
Yeah, and then
30s.
Singing in the Rain is another movie that was about that as well.
Yeah, in the 50s, but this movie takes place in the early 40s, so this is right in the golden era of cinema, so like after the 30s boom. In fact, and just another joke, they make a Citizen Kane reference the same year Citizen Kane came out.
Yeah, they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing.
And they even spoil the ending, so I don't know how the hell they managed that.
See,
I don't know.
look at that. They save you a couple hours, too. Isn't that nice of them?
It was a sled.
Now,
the sled I had when he was a kid. There, I just saved you 2 long, boobless hours.
Okay.
Family Guy could take a cue from this movie,
do you happen to know what time of year in 1941 this movie came out?
I'll do homework for you. It came
out Christmas Day 41.
So right
December
after Pearl
25th.
Harbor.
Yeah.
Near the end of the year. So
yeah, Pearl Harbor was December 7th, 1941. So this would have been right in the middle of World War II pandemonium in America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Actually, if anything, that makes really good timing for a satirical film like this.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's like America needs some levity in harrowing moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I know we don't often talk about old movies on this channel. I know Cody wants to wrangle us to do a Golden Age of Hollywood movie episode. I'm excited for that one, and I would highly recommend he checks this out too. I think he's gonna flip his lid. But Hellzapoppin, it is what it is, and I don't want to press further. It's sort of like it's a movie I feel not enough people talk about, and despite its age, I still think it's kind of overshadowed by other movies that came out around that era. And I think it's quite clever, and I think it's inspired countless movies that came out afterwards. It's incredibly ahead of its time, and I'm very curious how you guys would react to it.
I guess one last note for Hellzapoppin is it's interesting to see in the concept of satire. The New Yorker had only launched in 1925. And that's sort of become like the premier satire publication in terms of an essays and things like that in certainly North America, if not the world. I feel like Hellzapoppin doesn't really get its due as being, again, it's to use that expression again, the shot across the bow for any other, fourth wall breaking kind of humor that came in the decades since.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it did come out after Looney Tunes and stuff, so cartoonish humor was popular around that time.
That is fair. Looney Tunes was around for a decade or two before that, but I think in terms of, I guess, more mainstream cinema, if that makes sense, because it does things that so many properties take for granted nowadays.
Yeah,
for sure. But
that was great.
Yeah, no, this was a very fun episode. I always enjoy these, and I've been looking forward to talking about each of these films.
Yeah, no,
and
this was really
hearing
insightful.
what you guys think.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I was really happy to, actually share some film knowledge, the little I have.
Oh, our pleasure, Josh.
You picked quite a few good ones, Josh. Congratulations. Yeah. You're one of us now.
Yeah, you got a no prize.
One of us.
Go gobble. One of us. One of us.
Woo!
Another old movie reference.
Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we hope that you got some great recommendations out of some of these. And if that Golden Age of Cinema episode goes ahead, you'll probably be hearing from Evan and Lyle and probably Cody on this subject again very soon.
Yay,
all right, so
movies.
Thank you for watching and or listening. Have a great night, folks. That's all, folks. Just throwing it back to the time.